everyone. It's a wonderful day here in Carson City. It's Thursday, April 5th, 2018. It is. We're going to call a meeting of the Board of Supervisors to order. It is just at 8:30 a.m. We're in the Community Center at Sierra Room at 851 East William Street in our very own Carson City. Can we have a roll call for the record, please?
Good morning. Supervisor Aboud?
Here.
Supervisor Bonkowski?
Here.
Supervisor Bagwell?
Here.
Supervisor Barrett?
Here.
Mayor Kroll?
Here.
Mayor McCord?
Thank you very much. Can we call on our good friend Pat Professor to get us started today? Pat, how are you today?
Good morning.
You always do such a good job, man. So get us on the right foot, will you?
I will do that. I will do that. Well, good morning, all. And the Sermon on the Mount, the Lord was telling us to be anxious for nothing. Well, actually, he was telling us that we should seek first the kingdom of God. And Paul, the apostle, adds to that, and he gives us a little bit of direction in that. In Philippians chapter 6 or 4:6, it says this: "Be anxious for nothing, but let your prayers and supplications with thanksgiving be known before God, and the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding and comprehension, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus." So, Lord, as we seek first the kingdom of God, and with the Apostle Paul's direction to be anxious for nothing, Lord, it's kind of hard not to be anxious when we see huge agendas, lots of things that have to take place, and we only have several hours in the day to do that. So, Lord, we seek you first, and then the anxiousness goes away. So, Lord, we ask you that we would be guided by your peace today, guided by your counsel today, guided by your wisdom. Lord, and I know that within our church and many pastors that I've talked to, there are a lot of sick people in our community, especially some of the elderly and the children with this flu. And Lord, we ask you for your healing health to blow through this incredible city, Lord, and just cleanse the air, cleanse all these viruses out. So, Lord, let there be healing and health and strength. Be with our first responders, Lord, as they're out protecting our streets, and Lord, our police force. Lord, we ask for blessings upon them. And Lord, for the Board of Supervisors today, Lord, would you give them wisdom? Would you give them understanding? Would you give them clear direction for the future of our incredible city? And we thank you that you've called us to live here for a time such as this. May your name be glorified today. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Amen. You bet.
So who wants to lead the Pledge of Allegiance today? Nancy Paulson.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Thank you.
All right, this is the time on item number 5 for public comment. Anybody want to weigh in early at this comment period? We have one at the end of the day. We also have public comment generally where it's appropriate during each individual item. Anybody want to weigh in this morning? I don't see anybody, but as I said, we take public comment generally throughout the day. Nick, I wonder if you could, and I know I didn't ask you this before, but maybe it's public comment and it's the start of the day. Maybe we could just kind of let people know what, the potential of flooding, something like that, and what we're doing.
I think that's a good point, Mr. Mayor. So later on Friday, into Friday evening, and pretty much all day on Saturday, we're expecting a pretty significant atmospheric river. We do have sandbags at our locations available for residents to fill. So I think it would be prudent for residents, especially in areas that are prone to any type of flooding, especially flash flooding, to go out, check out your culvert, check out your culverts, check out ditches, look out for your neighbors, and we'll have Public Works out in force throughout the evening, throughout the night. We do expect by Sunday that the storm would subside, but I think it would be very important today and certainly tomorrow to begin preparations, especially if you do live in an area that is prone to flooding.
Good. I appreciate that. One time I was just on public comment here. When the city manager first got here. He told me one of the things. This is marine stuff and military stuff, but he told me that, when you come over the hill and you look at Carson City, we're in a natural bowl. You got the mountains on one side and the river on the other, and the water's got to come right through the middle of town. And so we are, for better or for worse, we live in a wonderful community, but we also have to pay attention to where we live. So if you got problems, call, who should they call? Should call dispatch or?
Well, depending on the storm, we'll have a storm center set up, and people can call dispatch. They can call 911, and they'll be routed over to our storm center. People can also call Public Works directly, and that number is available on the city webpage. They can also use, as people are going through their preparations, if they notice areas that they think that we need to be aware of, I would encourage people to use Carson City Connect on their smartphone or via the webpage, and we'll get crews out there to take care of whatever the problems are. So please either call directly Public Works in advance of the storm or use Carson City Connect. If it is going to be what we expect in terms of the severity of the storm and the amount of rain that we're projecting, then we will have a storm center set up. People can call dispatch, they can call 911, and it'll be routed to our emergency operations center.
Right. Thank you. All right. Forewarned is forearmed. All right. Let's take up item 6 minutes of March 1st. Everybody had a chance to look at those? Motion in order on March 1st, 2018.
I move to approve the minutes of the Carson City Board of Supervisors for March 1st, 2018 as presented.
There's a motion and a second discussion. Hearing and seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Carried. Let's take up March 15th, 2018 minutes. Any changes? I don't see any motions in order.
I move to approve the minutes of the Carson City Board of Supervisors for March 15th, 2018 with a previously submitted typographical correction.
Any motion and second on the motion discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Carried. Okay. I guess I better get my electric thing on. We're on electronics here, right?
We are.
Okay.
We've been yesing.
I got this big thing up here and I haven't been doing it, so. All right. Are there any changes to the agenda? I know of one
Yep.
change. You want to talk about, we're going to pull item 8 alpha. That's the presentation by Natalie Sterling on the Veterans Resource Center. Natalie has a family issue this morning, and so she'll be coming back.
Correct.
Any other changes?
Correct. No others.
Anybody? Board members? Anybody? Okay, unless hearing no objection, we will take the agenda. We'll adopt the agenda as published. Let's now all move from the dais down to the floor, and we'll take up the proclamation for the National Service Recognition Day and then the Parkinson Awareness Month. So let's all move down. Service. Thanks, Nick. Oh, sorry. I got two Nicks there. Mr. Good News.
Hello, Mr. Mayor.
How you doing? It's good to see you back here. Good to see you back here. All right. This is a proclamation for Mayor's Day of Recognition for National Service. I'm going to read the proclamation, then you fill in. Whereas service to others is a hallmark of the American character and central to how we meet our challenges. And whereas the nation's cities are increasingly turning to national service and volunteerism as an effective, cost-effective strategy to meet their needs. And whereas AmeriCorps and Senior Corps RSVP programs address the most pressing challenges facing our cities and nation, from educating students for the jobs of the 21st century and supporting veterans and military families to preserving the environment and helping communities recover from natural disasters. And whereas national service expands economic opportunity by creating more sustainable, resilient communities and providing education, career skills, and leadership abilities for those who serve. And whereas AmeriCorps and Senior Corps participants serve in more than 50,000 locations across the country, bolstering the civic, neighborhood, and faith-based organizations that are so vital to our economic and social well-being. Is Pat Propster still here? Did Pat walk out? Okay, I was going to... All right. Whereas national service participants increase the impact of the organizations they serve, both through their direct service and by managing millions of additional volunteers. And whereas national service represents a unique public-private partnership that invests in community solutions and leverages non-federal resources to strengthen community impact and increase the return on taxpayer dollars, as well as demonstrate commitment, dedication, and patriotism by making an intensive commitment to service, a commitment that remains with them in their future endeavors. And whereas the Corporation for National and Community Service shares a priority with county officials and mayors nationwide to engage citizens, improve lives, and strengthen communities, and is joining the National League of Cities, National Association of Counties, Cities of Service, and mayors and county officials across the country for Mayor and County Recognition Day for National Service on April 3rd, 2018. Now, therefore, I, Robert Kroll, Mayor of Carson City, on behalf of our community and our Board of Supervisors today, to hereby proclaim April 3rd, 2018 as, quote, National Service Recognition Day, and encourage residents to recognize the positive impact of national service in our city and thank those who serve and to find ways to give back to their communities. And Nick, I know I'd like you to say a few words, but you and I, and our entire board here and our staff understand and realize, the value of volunteer service. I mean, it's been an important part of what makes this community. I mean, we read a national proclamation here, but it makes a big difference here in our little community. And so on behalf of all of us, we want to say thank you for, taking your time to help out with this organization. And also, thank all the members of all the volunteers in Carson City for what they do. We couldn't do it without them. So let me give you this, and then we want to take a picture.
Just for the record, my name is Nick Providenti, and I'm the Deputy Director and CFO of Nevada Rural County's RSVP program. Our Executive Director, Susan Haas, couldn't be here today. She's actually in Elko working up there. And she asked me to personally thank the Board of Supervisors for this proclamation and for honoring National Service volunteers such as AmeriCorps members, Senior Corps volunteers for their 6th Annual National Service Day of Recognition. With me today are Melanie Barkley. If you guys could stand, please. She's our RSVP's Director of Development. We have Anita Moreno, our Special Events and Transportation Coordinator. She works with a lot of city folks on some of the fairs, so I'm sure a lot of the folks know her. And Sandy Severance, who is our Program Director. We also have a couple of board members here, Stacy Giomi and our own Nick Morano. They're on our board, and we appreciate them very much. We also have some wonderful volunteers here that came with us, and we like to really appreciate them because they take time out of their busy schedule to recognize, how important volunteering is. And with the help of these and many other volunteers, elders are able to remain independent and in their homes with dignity, which is very important. Their wide range of service extends from providing transportation to the doctor and other essential trips to veteran services, personal emergency response systems, working in other local nonprofit organizations such as the Carson Tahoe Hospital, the Carson City Sheriff's Office, and the library. We provide respite care and caregiver support and just a bunch of other valuable service activities. And we're always looking for volunteers, so anybody, please get in touch with us if you're willing and able to volunteer. So again, we thank you for your continued support of National Service and of RSVP. Thank you very much.
All right, now let's come on up here and we'll do a picture and have everybody come on up. Mr. City Manager, you're getting a picture too. Come on, board members. Come on. All right, here. You want to get next to good news there? Good news, come on in the middle here.
That's the old one. I like it.
You know,
I like it. Good news. Yeah, the old good news.
We call you good news, we call Nancy.
Yeah.
And Jason, like, really good news.
No, we're working on a new nickname for Jason. It's kind of,
I'm just
good
glad that
news Nancy.
the city's still here
Good news
after all
Jason
that.
doesn't have a ring.
Come on, Marty, someone who goes by Sandy.
We'll be short. People in the back.
Come on up here, come on. You're good.
Crucial link.
All right, we're gonna put this out in front here like this.
Okay, how about you?
There, just like that.
We'll slide over a little bit. How's that?
Got enough?
All right.
That's perfect.
Oh, wait, can you get one with my phone? No, I'm kidding.
Thank you so much, guys, for all that you do.
Say hello to Susan.
Oh, if it's an increase, we're all commercial. If it's a decrease, we call them the missing link.
We still on here? There we are. Next, I'd like to read and take up a proclamation for Parkinson's Awareness Month, April 2018. I've got a number of people here that are interested in this proclamation and creating an awareness month for Parkinson's. I'd like to ask Brian and Lily Reedy to come up here, please, if they could. Brian, I know you have others with you here today. Just a few. But you got the right shirts on. Yes. Every day, every victory counts. All right. All right. All right. You know, I've known Brian for a lot of years. I can't remember how many years, Brian. Been in school. Over 20, you know. This is a proclamation for Parkinson's Awareness Month 2018. Whereas Parkinson's disease is a chronic progressive neurological disease and is the second most common non-degenerative disease in the United States. And whereas there is inadequate data on the incidence and prevalence of Parkinson's disease, but is estimated to affect 6.9 million people in the world, and that number is expected to reach 14.2 million by 2040. Wow. And whereas Parkinson's disease is the 14th leading cause of death in the United States, according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, there are millions of Americans who are caregivers, family members, and friends greatly impacted by Parkinson's disease. And whereas it is estimated that the annual economic burden of Parkinson's disease is well over $26.4 billion a year, and the indirect cost to patients and family members totaling $6.3 billion. And whereas research suggests that the cause of Parkinson's disease is a combination of genetic and environmental factors, but the exact cause in most individuals is still unknown. There currently is no objective test or biomarker to diagnose Parkinson's disease. You know, that's kind of odd in the world we live in today, you know, where we're making such advances on every day. Whereas the symptoms of Parkinson's disease vary from person to person, can include tremors, slowness of movement and rigidity, gait and balance difficulty, speech and swallowing disturbances, cognitive impairment and dementia, mood disorders, and a variety of non-motor symptoms. And whereas hope does exist for people with Parkinson's because there are therapies like intensive physical therapy and dedicated efforts in speech therapy that are proven to be neuroprotective and can help slow down the progression of this terrible disease. And whereas volunteers, researchers, caregivers, and medical professionals are working to improve the quality of life of persons living with Parkinson's disease and their families, increased research, education, and community support services are needed to find more effective treatments to provide access to quality care to those living with this disease today. Whereas rising awareness and working together as a whole community, we can help ease the burden of this disease, support each other, and support government efforts to bring new and positive therapies to more effectively gather new and relevant scientific data on people with all types of neurological disease and to bring telemedicine to the communities that do not have specialists to help. Now, therefore, I, Robert Kroll, on behalf of our community and the Board of Supervisors, do hereby proclaim the month of April as 2018 as Parkinson's Awareness Month. And Brian, you want to... Why don't you say some things if you need to bring other people up, and do what Lily says to do.
As always. Thank you. You guys want to come on up, and I'll say a few words as you're coming up. So on behalf of all of us in Carson City with Parkinson's, on behalf of all of us in Carson City with Parkinson's and the care partners who take care of all of us with Parkinson's, we thank you for this recognition and this proclamation. We represent the Carson City Parkinson's Awareness and Advocacy Group and also the Rock City Group, which Dr. Nina Vogel and Cisco Rodriguez do all on their volunteer work to help us get bigger, stronger, and better as this disease tries to take that away. So it really is a community effort, and Carson City has been amazingly supportive with everything we've done to raise awareness. I'm hoping people will get out to the public library. We put up a display there for the whole month of Parkinson's and the awareness of it. Keep an eye on the Nevada Appeal. We're going to have articles in there throughout the month. We've got their support to do interviews and focus on families here, and we'll be doing stuff on the Healthy Tuesday section. And recently, Lily and I were given the honor, we're Davis Finney ambassadors, Davis Finney Foundation ambassadors. We were given the honor to go to Washington, D.C. And what's amazing is our two representatives that are from Carson City, Senator Heller and Congressman Amade, both gave us 30 minutes each of their time with their aides to listen to our needs. They had a lot of questions. They were extremely supportive. And all the things that Mayor Crowell mentioned in there, like telemedicine and getting better data, they're going to do their best to make sure we get the funding to do that. So we just feel very enriched and enlivened by the support of the city, by all of you, by the whole community. And we just hope that you continue to learn more about us so that we can all be more intricate in helping get rid of this thing or get better therapies. So thank you.
Well said, Brian. Okay, well said. All right.
Do you want to add
Lily,
Yeah.
you want to say anything?
about Care Partners?
Well, we have a support group in Carson City for, we call it awareness and advocacy, because we sometimes wonder if support group, the word makes people nervous, but we also have a coffee and conversation group for caregivers. And we're finding it very much a respite, and we encourage anybody else who is out in our community dealing with Parkinson's to please join in.
Thank you, Brian. Okay,
Thank
let's
you.
put this here. Let's all come up here. Come on up here.
We're the movers and shakers.
That was good, actually. Yeah.
All right, let's see how we do. Yeah, let's hold it like that. You got one.
You could go ahead and put basketball.
Once he sits, absolutely.
Stand right here. Because I can't see you in the photo.
Don't say hold still, that's really hard.
Yeah. Go ahead and look over here.
Is the dog smiling?
I think it is.
Okay, I think we're ready to go on. Let's now take up the consent agenda. Anybody from the public want anything pulled from the consent agenda for particular discussion? Seeing none, board members, anybody? Okay, motion's in order to approve the consent agenda.
I move to approve the consent agenda for items 9 and 10 as published on the agenda.
Second.
There's a motion and a second on the motion. Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye or punching the button. Aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Carried. Okay, thank you. Let's now take up the sheriff's first item. This is to consider and possibly approve the submission of the Department of Justice 2018 Edward Byrne Memorial Justice Assistance Grant for a behavioral health peace officer position. Who's doing this? Okay, come on up. Why wouldn't we want to do this?
Mr. Mayor, I can't think of any reason why we shouldn't.
Okay. Thanks.
Call that a leading question.
Go ahead, come on. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Ready. Who's going to start?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. For the record, my name is Jerome Toshtrant. I'm the Assistant Sheriff for Carson City. As we presented about 2 weeks ago, we're submitting or asking for permission to submit for an application for a full-time position of a behavioral health peace officer. This is a very powerful position, and today I brought some backup. Becca Bach here, who's sitting to my right, she'll be able to answer any technical questions about what's happening in the trenches and how this position is going to be so effective. I'm open to any questions, and I believe the board has a copy of the application and
I think last time we were concerned about wanting to see the entire application, make sure there was no hidden pitfalls there, so we'll see where we go today. Any members of Becca, you want to say anything? Why don't you give us a little history and rundown? History is the wrong word, but give us a little rundown of what you see out in the community right now. I know you're out and around and dealing with a lot of different areas, so why don't you just give us a thumbnail, whether it's on the ground or not, just about in your area of expertise?
Okay, so my name is Becca Bach. I'm a licensed clinical social worker that has been riding with the Carson City Sheriff's Office deputies for the Mobile Outreach Safety Team since 2014. And I do also ride in Lyon County 1 day a week, and I do ride with a behavioral health deputy. They have that behavioral health deputy grant. And what that has allowed us to do in Lyon County is to not have a beat. So we rove most calls. So in Carson City, this grant would allow us to allow a peace officer not to be on a beat and not have to respond to beat calls and just respond to the many calls that we get for welfare checks, follow-ups with persons with behavioral health issues. We also respond to a lot of calls. Yesterday we had we have a cell phone that we carry, and we get calls from family members and agencies for people who are suffering with dementia and Alzheimer's who may not have caretakers and are gravely disabled and not able to care for themselves or have failure to thrive. So we're actually first responders in those cases. On this particular case yesterday, we were able to place a Legal 2000 on an 86-year-old woman who was pretty much dying in her bed, and now she's in a safe, comfortable placement. So we do respond to a lot of those types of calls. We also respond to suicidal calls. Our whole objective is really to keep people in the community and not out of jail, out of the hospitals, and it's a quality of life situation. So we're trying to increase their quality of life and keep them into services and in their community with their families where they belong. There's so many people in the community that don't know the resources, aren't familiar with the resources. It's a very difficult, it's hard to navigate all the systems, so that's what our job is to respond to calls and help families get situated in treatment programs in the community.
Thanks, Becca. I know you're out there. All the board knows you're out there a lot, and I know our deputies are out there. Supervisor Bunkowski has a question.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I think this program is great. I have some technical questions for you on page 8 of the grant application. Where in the table it goes through the actions that will be taken and the timelines. And on September 2nd, 2019, or actually September 27th, 2019, says distribute third survey to those contacted by BHPO. And I think we made that correction already. It's the fourth survey, correct?
I want to thank you very much for that feedback. Yes, we took that, we changed that, and there's also a second typo that we changed in, I believe it was page 10, and I appreciate that also.
Yeah, I think it's actually page 12, and it's that's one that I want to go over as well, which is that this program or the grant covers all of the costs in year 1. In year 2, in year 3, it covers 75%, and in year 4, it covers 50%, and then in the year 5, the expectation is that the city will cover 100% of the cost of this program.
Yes, sir. So, in speaking directly with the funding sources, they're very reluctant to have ongoing 100% financing of or funding of these types of positions. There is an expectation that if it's successful, that their funding source will begin to titrate away. So the plan that we have, and of course this is a year-by-year grant, would be to be self-funded within about 5 years.
Great, thank you very much.
Any other questions from the board? Okay, everybody have a chance to look at public comment. Anybody? Are we okay with this? Somebody want to make a motion?
I move to approve the submission of the Department of Justice 2018 Edward Byrne Memorial Justice Assistance Grant Program for a behavioral health peace officer position.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor signify or click aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Okay, looks like it carried. Okay, all right. Thank you very much. Now you can go back. Huh?
Just a discussion.
Discussion, yeah. Sure.
Just want to say thank you for, I know it was difficult maybe to have to come back, but it just provided so much more information and detail, and I want to thank you for going through that with us. Thanks for the good job.
Thank you, ma'am. I appreciate we're here to serve.
That's a good ending. I know why he's got you there. All right. You might well just tell the sheriff to stay seated there. That's fine. Yeah. All right. All right. All right. Let's take up item 13. This is possible purchase of Motorola replacement radios through the joinder contract. Who's going to do this? We got. Oh boy. Okay. All right. Laura, do you want to take us through this? And before you do that, let me, on behalf of the board, say thanks to you. This is Laura's last board meeting today. She's been instrumental in making sure that our contract and procurement programs are done in a very professional way. And she's been a mainstay in the City Hall. I can tell you that. She's always there. She lives north of Reno, so even though it's an inconvenience for her to come down here each day, she's just been a tremendous employee of Carson City. And Laura, we will miss you. We'll miss your technical ability, and you don't counsel any I don't know what that phrase is, but you don't counsel errors. We wish you well. You're going to that other place up there. I don't, what's that called anyway? Tumwa, is that what it is? Tumwa? Yeah. And I think, one that'll give you more time, for your family up there. But it's also a sign, that Carson City prides itself on good people. And it's really nice that, even though we hate to lose people, we also understand that good people deserve good things for themselves. So now, if it's had that, we'll see and go on. All right.
All right, good morning. Laura Rader, Purchasing and Contracts. This is to approve the purchase of Motorola replacement radios through the NASPO joinder contract for a not-to-exceed amount of $258,233.62 to be jointly funded from the Fleet Management and Ambulance Funds. And these radios will be for the fire department. And as you see, I have both Sean Weiss and TJ DeHaven to answer any questions.
Sean or Chief, Sean, why don't you tell us what's going on and why we need to do this?
Good
Chief,
morning,
you got
Mr.
anything to
Mayor.
add in?
Board, yes, the reason for this purchase is the Motorola XT line of radios is no longer supported by Motorola. They haven't been manufactured since October of 2014. The depot level service repair support that we get from Motorola will end at in December of this year. So this is our first step in replacing that series of radios.
So, having said that, how many additional radios do we have after this purchase that we'll need to replace of the older model that's not going to be supported anymore?
I'm not sure. I'd have to look at that.
Can I jump in briefly? I mean, not to directly give the number because I don't know off the top of my head, but as part of the capital plan that we intend to present to the board when we present the budget, you will see in there each department who is a radio user is assessed enough money to recapitalize on an annual basis 10% of all our handsets. So the intention is to get a 10-year life cycle out of the handsets. That includes also the vehicle mounts. So we're gonna recapitalize 10% every year. We're also bringing this year as part of the capital program upgrades to the backbone, to the infrastructure, the repeaters and so on. We're proposing to add a second fire department, or second repeated fire department channel. So we're doing a lot with our radio backbone and with the handsets themselves. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, thank you, Nick. That's exactly what I was looking for.
Any other questions of the panel? Public comment, anybody? Anybody want to weigh in? Not, are we ready for a motion?
I'll make it.
Okay, Supervisor Abel.
I move to approve the purchase of Motorola replacement radios through joinder contract number 06913, effective through June 30th of 2018 through NASPO, for a not-to-exceed amount of $258,233.62 to be jointly funded from the Fleet Management and Ambulance Funds.
Second.
Motion and a second on a motion discussion. Hearing and seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Carried. Okay, thanks. Chief and Sean, thank you, and Laura, okay. Let's take up, actually, you're there. Do we want to? Okay. Come on. Let's take up 13 Bravo, Alternative Sentencing Drug Testing System. Laura, are you going to help out with this one too? All right. All right. We got the Chief, Tad, and Laura Rader here. All right. Let's see where we're going on this one. Tell us what it's all about.
This is to approve Contract 1718-147, Alternative Sentencing Drug Testing System with Microgenics Corporation, part of the Thermo Fisher Scientific, for a not-to-exceed annual amount of $64,000 for 5 years, with 2 one-year renewal options for on-site urinalysis substance abuse testing to be funded from the drug testing fees account in the general fund. The current contract will expire on May 5th. The city issued an RFP and received 3 proposals. The evaluation committee is recommending Thermo Fisher.
Okay. So what's it about? Go.
You knew this is coming. Just a question. Explain why this will improve your testing measures and what this particular company will provide.
Tad Fletcher, DAS Chief, for the record. With this new this new system, when I ran the numbers, we're going to save in a neighborhood of anywhere from $15,000 to $25,000. I ran the numbers from last year and compared under the old contract to if we were under this one, and this isn't all the outlying costs. This is just the cost to run the lab. From March to March, it was $53,981, and under this contract, it would have been $34,422. The system that they're bringing in also allows us, we can run a series of tests at one time, and if all of a sudden we need to run a test in the middle of that cycle, there's a feature where we can drop a urine test in if someone's on site that we want to run at the same time. feedback that I've gotten, Washoe County uses them, is amazing. And I think it's just going to streamline our system and save some money for the city, so.
Tad, does this particular company provide for testing of masking drugs or no?
No, but what they do offer, they partner with Paracelsus, which is the computer program that runs our color code system. They said they have measures to look for numbers that can maybe help identify. But with that, one of the other cost savings, I'm kind of excited. I want to see over the next 12 months what we do save, because I found out some new features that they have. Instead of running the same drugs, if someone's ordered a drug testing for 3 days a week, instead of running the same drug testing every time, we can test for up to 15, 20 different drugs, and the computer automatically cycles them through that week. They don't know which drug they're getting tested for, but we can, for the same cost or lower, we can test for more drugs throughout that week. So, you bet.
So, do we have another page for the agreement? It ends on page 8. Is there anything else, just a signature page missing? But there's no other wording on the contract? Is there any, or on the exhibit, or we're good? Does it end on page 8? I just wanted to make sure that's how the exhibit ended.
16.
Yeah, I believe it's 16, and there was a date missing on the signature page of the mayor's, and that's been corrected, but you should
it's
have
corrected?
16 page, you
She's
should have the
talking about
full.
Exhibit A. There's 8
Okay.
pages,
Oh,
8 pages of
their
Exhibit A.
proposal
Right, is there
on
only
there.
8?
Yes,
Okay,
their proposal,
and-
yeah.
But we
correct.
got a correction? Okay,
Yeah,
I'm sorry, I
and
just
that's
didn't
been
get it. Okay.
Correct, okay.
All right. Anybody else? Public comment? Okay. Want to do it? Motion's in order.
I move to approve contract number 1718-147, Alternative Sentencing Drug Testing System with Microgenics Corp., part of Thermo Fisher Scientific, for a not-to-exceed annual amount of $64,000 for a term of 5 years and a total not-to-exceed amount of $320,000, with 2 one-year renewal options for on-site urinalysis substance abuse testing facility to be funded from the drug testing fees account in the general fund.
Second.
There's a motion, and a second on the motion. Discussion?
Yes.
Hearing and discussion?
Just a quick point,
Go.
Laura, before you leave us, if, when you tell them that this item's been approved, could you please let them know that the city of Carson is in Southern California and that we're the city of Carson City? Thank you.
And I just have a comment too. Laura, we're going to miss you. And Tad, I want to thank you for pursuing this.
Yeah, and sometimes I'll get questions from people, call me up and say, what are you doing on the street down there? I said, man, I don't know what that street is. And, well, you're a dumb idiot, man. I said, well, where are you? I'm in Carson. I said, well, I'm in Carson City. Where? Anyway, wrong city. Okay, all right. On the motion, all in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Carried. Okay. Let's take up the last one under purchasing contracts. This is a potential contract for Public Works and our emergency vehicles with Spencer Motor Works. Laura, you want to give us the top line again, and Zach, then you tell us what's going on here, the nuts and bolts of it, please, and why we have to do it, okay? Or should do it.
All right, this is to approve contract 1718-138, upfit Public Works and emergency vehicles with Spencer Motorworks DBA TSA Custom Car and Truck for an annual not-to-exceed amount of $300,000 for 5 years to be funded from various city accounts. The city issued an RFP and received 2 proposals. The evaluation committee is recommending TSA Custom Car and Truck.
Zach, what are we doing? And I assume this is budgeted throughout the different accounts, but Laura would have said no if that's
Yeah.
correct.
So what we're doing is proposing a contract because we are starting to see an influx of city vehicles, and we're definitely exceeding the cost of even $50,000 in upfits with the amount of vehicles we bought this year and what we're forecasting to see in the next couple of years. So with that, we wanted to go out to competitive bid, and we wanted to get our respective vendors to, compete against each other so we could get a fair price, so we could actually get these vehicles put together. And so I did put fire, police, and public works, but also within that is also alternative sentencing, juvenile, health, and human services. So any of those vehicles that are getting put together, we're getting competitive pricing on getting products that are installed. We were fortunate enough to get a vendor that is local in the area that's actually capable of providing us with all the products on the list from top to bottom that meet our specifications as well, and also keeping it easier for us to warranty products that are, close by instead of having to take vehicles over to Sacramento or send them down to Las Vegas. So this is kind of an exciting deal to, come together and get a lot of vehicles on the road.
Board members? Public comment? Looks like a motion's in order. Want to do it, Supervisor Bonkowski?
I move to approve contract number 1718-138, upfit of public works and emergency vehicles with Spencer Motor Works LLC, DBA TSA Custom Car and Truck, for a not-to-exceed annual amount of $300,000 for 5 years, for a total contract amount not to exceed $1,500,000, to be funded from the various city accounts.
There's a motion and a second on the motion. Discussion. Hearing and seeing none, all in favor signal by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Carried. Thank you very much. Let's take up item, thank you, Laura, and thanks again. Let's take up item 14, Alpha, home.
Good morning, Lee Plemmel, Community Development Director, and I have with me up here Lisa Dayton representing the applicant in this particular item. This item is to approve and authorize the mayor to sign a letter acknowledging an application from Northern Nevada Community Housing, an application to the state of Nevada for the use of home funds as part of a financing for the affordable housing project located at 680 Hot Springs Road. Also acknowledging that the home funds can trigger property tax exemption, and I'll talk a bit about that, and to provide public comments regarding the project. So there's application. So home funds, they're described in there. They are federal funds used for one of the things they can be used for is for construction of rental housing that is affordable to those of certain income limits, which is the case in this case for this project. They're passed through the state, so the applications are due later in April, I believe it is, to the state. So the applicant is submitting an application for home funds for this project at this particular location. The knowledge of home, I'll defer to Lisa for a lot of your more detailed questions about the funds. One of the things is that this item is not approval of a tax deferment or tax waiver on this, so they understand that. This is just to submit the application, and it's the city's acknowledgement that this project is going forward, and they're submitting the application. I have Assessor Dave Dolly has joined us. I'd like to thank him for coming, because in case you have any questions, there's actually a process once the funds are awarded to come back and submit an application through the assessor that comes to the Board of Supervisors for that tax exemption. So that would be an item in the future for discussion, and he can answer questions on that if you have any. The project is located on a property that's about 2 acres. It's in a multifamily apartment zoning district now, so it's zoned appropriately. It's in a good location, close to services, close to bus route, close to groceries and availability, so it's in a good location. You could see the draft letter that you're signing acknowledges that the city has been looking for affordable housing, or that's something that we understand is a concern in this community, and this project would bring some needed affordable housing to the rental housing to the community. So I think with that, that's the gist of the application, and we'll be happy to answer questions.
we got a couple questions up here, and Lisa, when you're answering questions, I'm sure that, you'll be answering a lot of the issues about, who provides home funds, what are the restrictions and things like that. So we'll go, who's first? Supervisor
I'll
Abel.
also note, and I did pass out, and maybe one of you can give a copy to the recorder at the end, but just before the meeting, they're still in preliminary design, but I passed out a preliminary site plan that hasn't been reviewed by the city, but it gives you an idea of the project layout there, so that's what you have before you.
Thank you. Lisa, this is much needed, so I'll just say that. But my question would be, how do you interface with the local agencies in order to get some of our folks in need of housing into these types of units?
Sure. And I'll give you a little bit of background on Northern Nevada Community Housing. They are a nonprofit, primarily based in Washoe County. They built and manage 13 properties that address similar populations. Their mission is to serve the hardest to house in the community. So they are already working in Carson City. They were brought in to manage Richards Crossing. So they've already started to establish some of those relationships, but typically they reach out to other local established service providers that are already working in the community and basically work with them to help house their clients. So they understand that sometimes there's a little bit of additional support and assistance needed to process clients, to work with them, to be a little bit more patient, understanding. So typically, in the special needs populations that they try and house, and each property typically sets aside 20% of the units to house specifically special needs populations. Those clients are coming through service providers that are already in the community, and they are already typically assigned somebody that they're reporting to that's kind of supporting them as they try and get better. Mm-hmm.
Dave, if you could come up, please. If you could walk us through the process for applying for the property tax exemption and then what needs to be done on an annual basis for them to continue with that.
Thank you. Dave Dolly, Carson City Assessor's Office. So there is a process. Nevada law, Nevada Administrative Code does say that they have to actually apply for the actual exemption. So the property itself has to be occupied by low-income people before the exemption would qualify. So we have a form that they would fill out, and it just requires all kinds of financial information. We send that over to the DA's office. The DA's office either gives us a thumbs up or a thumbs down. Typically in this type of scenario, it's a thumbs up. We do, each spring, we do send out a letter requesting the information be verified again for the next fiscal year so that we can continue the exemption or deny it.
So the exemption would not come back in front of the board. It's handled through your office and the DA's office, both initially and on an ongoing basis?
Correct. This is the only time that you'll see it.
Thank you.
So when you accept home funds, how many years are you then required to keep it in low-income status or affordable, whatever words you want to use? Because I know it has conditions within that. And then did I see that they're also going to ask for tax credits?
That's correct. So the home funds, the term really is dependent upon the amount of home funds that you receive. So the home funds term typically requires 15 to 20 years of compliance to meet the affordability levels that you committed to in your application. The tax credits are automatically 30 years, but we always go with 50, yes. So that helps give us a level of confidence that the project will remain as anticipated. Okay.
And that's because if they're going to use tax credits, somebody's going to get the benefit of that, and they're going to want to make sure that it continues on. Okay. Any other questions of the board? Public comment? Thanks, Dave. And let me just say, I think Supervisor Abel mentioned, this is an area that needs help. And, like Richards Crossing, it helped a number of folks, this area here, hopefully this is the start of additional development in this area, because it's one I think all of us up here at this board have been looking at for a number of years, so, okay. Go.
And then I just want to say that how pleased I am with Northern Nevada Community Housing. I visit Richards Crossing on a regular basis for activities, and I just have to say, it's still as spotless as it was when it opened, and they have a wonderful manager there. The community will be lucky to have such a good partner.
Good, okay. Motion Supervisor Abel, move.
I move to approve and authorize the mayor to sign a letter acknowledging an application from Northern Nevada Community Housing to the state of Nevada for the use of home investment partnership funds as part of the financing for the affordable housing project located at 680 Hot Springs Road, and that the home funds participation will trigger a property tax exemption.
There's a motion and lots of seconds on the motion. Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor, signal by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Carried. Okay. Thank you very much. When are you going to turn dirt, do you know?
Well, that's a ways off, so we apply in April and May, and then we would hope to break ground early spring of 2019.
All right. Thank you. All right. Do we want to take a break real quick here before we take up the restaurant issues? Why don't we do that? And let me ask, first of all, this is the third time we've been up on health. Are we really ready to go?
We're ready.
All right, we'll take a break.
We are ready.
And then, during the break, just double check. All right, I'm just kidding you. All right, we'll be in recess for about 10 minutes.
Thank you.
Sidebars are all right, that's okay. All right. All right, we're going to bring the meeting of the Board of Supervisors back to order. We're now going to take up item 15, and we'll start with the business impact statement for possible changes to Carson City Municipal Code Title 9, Chapter 9.05. So Iris, you want to tell us what we're doing here, and then you can link that with the next one as well, because they're connected a little bit. So.
Absolutely. So we're presenting changes to Carson City Municipal Code, Section 9.05. This business impact statement was produced in accordance with the requirements under NRS 237. We sent out a bunch of mailings, and we've done a lot of public notice in regard to this. We sent out several mailings.
Yeah, if somebody doesn't have public notice about this right now, man, I don't know. We've practiced a couple times, so that's okay. That's it.
Really? but yes. So we sent out mailings. We've had a couple of meetings, and we've been here a couple of times preceding this. We also presented to the State Board of Health. But the comments that we received were actually very few comments. They were positive and supportive, and so we're just asking that you make a finding that it does not impose a direct or significant burden on businesses for this. Do you want to do, well,
the actual finding that we're saying is that it does or does not?
Does not.
That does not.
That's what we're asking,
All right.
does not.
All right. Public comment on this issue? Anybody? Board? All right, let's take a motion.
I move to accept and place a business impact statement on file with the Board of Supervisors, finding that the proposed changes to CCMC Title 9, Chapter 9.05 do not impose a direct and significant economic burden on a business, or that the proposed changes do not directly restrict the formation, operation, or expansion of a business.
There's a motion and a second on the motion. Discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Carried. Okay. Let's take up the companion issue 15 Bravo. This is the first reading of an ordinance amending Title 9. I know we went through it a couple times, but why don't you tell us what we're doing here again, please, and we'll go from there.
So again, this is Carson City Municipal Code, Section 9.05. This relates to food safety. We have added a bunch of sections related to food safety, but the big parts are adding the requirement of a certified food protection manager, doing the grading card system, which is different from how things were done previously. And let's see, what else did I... Oh, classifying food establishments by risk level. If you guys would like to ask questions, we are ready to answer them.
Why don't just to refresh, why don't you just, Dustin, why don't you or Iris, either one of you, which establishments would have to have an individual assigned to it? And what are the risk criteria? What are they based on?
For the record, Dustin Booth, Carson City Health and Human Services. So with this proposal, we're going to have 3 risk levels, risk level 1, 2, and 3. Risk level 2 and 3 would be required to have a certified food protection manager, and it's all based on the type of food that they serve and the type of procedures that they do within those food establishments. And the risk level 2 would allow for a certified food manager to be available by phone, whereas a risk level 3 would need to make sure that while they're operating that they have a certified food manager on site.
How many do risk level 2 and 3 3 risk levels do we have in Carson City? Give me an example of one that does that.
So a risk level 3 would be a 24-hour operation, so it'd be like our casinos that run 24 hours a day, that may be doing things in the middle of the night. Obviously they're serving food, but they may also be doing cooling of food in the middle of the night for the next day. So those would fall into a risk level 3 category. Sushi establishments. So we're really looking at what they do, and especially if they're cooking food and then cooling it down to be served for another day. That looking at where foodborne illness occurs, that's one of the risk factors, that if you're not properly cooling food, that's where bacteria could grow and produce toxins that could make somebody sick the next time that they eat that.
Okay, thanks. Board comments, questions? John, Supervisor Barrett.
Couple little items here. On page 3 of the ordinance, or 195 in the packet, under 13A6, there's two references of the word "a" in that sentence, and I don't think the second one is necessary. Second one is...
Wait, would you mind just slowing down just a tad? I just want to make some notes.
Not a problem. Unless it's been rectified, in my packet it was there.
Did you say page
3 of the
13A?
ordinance, or 195 of our packet, under 13A6.
13A.
There's two A's in that sentence fragment. I'm not sure the second one's necessary.
Temporary food permit, right.
Page 5, 197 in the packet, section 10, near the bottom of the page, it reads, "Except as otherwise as provided." I think that second "as" is not necessary. Third, page 9, which is 201 in our packet, I was curious is the 60-day grace period for the certified food person a little long, or is that industry standard, or how does that work?
We actually thought about this a lot because we wanted to make sure that people had sufficient time to deal with getting the requirements completed in cases like this. So we thought about 30. That was a little short. They do require a class to attend and certifications. So we think 60 days is reasonable, and that's why we proposed it.
Secondary, Dustin's comment about the casinos and sushi, et cetera, does that mean they have to have one there, or more than one, to have them for 24 hours if it's a casino?
Yes, so during if an establishment has, 24-hour operation or a very long day, they would most likely have to have more than one person be a certified food protection manager.
Thank you for those things, and I want to apologize to you publicly, Dustin. I harried you and Lisa a bit, or you harried Lisa for me about the language on the release of the information, and you were going to work on language.
You mean Iris? Iris.
Yeah. Did I say something else?
Lisa.
I'm sorry.
What do you call it when you call Iris and Lisa? That's
I call it a toothache that's giving me a headache.
No offense taken. Don't worry about it.
At any rate, on the number 4 that I have on page 33 of the ordinance, or 225 in our packet, that's where I was talking with Dustin yesterday about the language on release and on the on a checkbox on the thing, and I wanted to see it in the ordinance because, as I said to Dustin yesterday, as far as I'm concerned, 10 years from now, nobody will remember why it's there and that it's there. And if it's not in there, but it's on a checkbox that says, the person has appealed, somebody might say, we don't need that, let it go away. So I wondered if you had language for that.
So the other board members know what's happening here. Dustin and I spoke yesterday at length about some concerns that Supervisor Barrett brought to our attention as it relates to what if someone requests an appeal, and what will the public be aware of at that time if somebody gets a grade of B and then someone appeals. Last time we were here, we talked about the checkbox going on the grading card, which there's definitely no objection to doing that. As far as writing that particular language into the ordinance, I do not recommend that because it is a policy versus law, but we did come up with some language that I hope that you will be happy with. We did email it to you. I have extra copies for everybody and also for anybody that wants them in the public. So if you don't mind, I'll approach and give them to you now. So the language here, it would go on page 33. It would add section 4E, and it just says, and if an appeal is requested pursuant to section 4D, which is the previous section that talks about requesting an appeal, any findings provided to the public will include notification of the appeal request.
That should cover it. I was concerned of the timing. As I talked with Dustin yesterday, I was concerned that if the person appealed immediately at the time with the inspector and said, I'm going to appeal this, that he'd be given a little, an opportunity to sign a form saying he's going to appeal it, and then provide the details of his appeal later in the 10-day grace period to provide the appeal, so that if when the information was released to the public, that it would include that the restaurateur didn't agree with the findings. I'm not trying to protect the restaurateurs or whoever's in the food. I am just as concerned as anybody else about foodborne illness. I just think, given what I used to do, that I know this stuff gets out to the public. Public reacts, and they don't see a follow-up story. As a matter of fact, I don't think there are usually any follow-up stories. It's just listed in the paper. So I think that'll cover it. And I thank you again. I apologize to you, Dustin, that I wasn't clear. I wanted something particularly in the ordinance. Maybe last time when we talked, I did want it on a sign, and I should have been more clear to you. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Public comment? Anybody? I think we've worked pretty good in this last edition. Kind of just fits right in and closes us off, I think. It's good. It's a good result to an issue that was raised. So, okay. Let's take a motion.
Bill number
105.
I move to introduce on first reading Bill number 105, an ordinance amending Title 9, Chapter 9.05, Health and Welfare Food Establishments, adding and amending sections related to the prevention of foodborne disease or illness with the amended language as presented to page 33, item added 4E.
Did we want to just add those small changes that he also made on the other two pages?
And with the typographical, non-substantive typographical errors corrected.
Second.
All right, there's a motion and there's a second. For the record, it's the motions by Supervisor Abad, the seconds by Supervisor Bankowski, and others want to weigh in. But let's, on the motion, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Carried. Okay, thank you very much. All right.
And again, thank you very much. I appreciate the work you did on this. I know it was a long and intensive process.
You know, somebody was telling me during the break, though, you know, this is the third time we've heard this, but, you know, that says one thing, but the real thing it says is, you know, we spend the time to get things right, and that's whether you got egg on your face or what the city manager would call a dirty shirt. We take it up and we do the right thing. So, and that's what's important in government, in my view. So, all right, let's now speak up. Oh, I should speak up. Okay, I'll speak up.
What'd you say?
What'd I say? What I said. Let me just repeat that. What I said is that, you know, the last item. We had it 3 times, you know, to get it right, and you know that says one thing, you know, that hey, we can't get it right at least twice, so we had to take three shots at it. The other side of that is, and I believe the right side of that issue is, you know, we don't do things here unless we're convinced that, you know, it's done. And if that means that we've got egg on our face, or as I said, the city manager sometimes calls it a dirty shirt, we wear that and go on. I mean, that's what we're supposed to do. We're not supposed to say, okay, you know, give excuses here and there. Let's get it right and go on. So that's what we do. All right. Who's doing the next one? Ronnie, you going to do this?
I'll start it off. Nikki Aker, Director of Carson City Health and Human Services. So we're before you today to ask permission to apply for our Title 10 or Family Planning Grant. We've had this grant since 2009. Since about 2012, 2012, we have received the grant directly from the federal government, where prior to that, we were a subgrantee of the state. This grant is to provide family planning services that we currently do. There's no match required. No additional staff will be hired. We've already got the staff in place. And as part of this grant, we have Douglas County has been a part of this grant since we used to provide services down there. And after they started providing their own services, then we subgranted to them, and we are continuing to do that within this application because this is a competitive grant throughout Nevada, and it increases our service area, and we retain that relationship with Douglas County. So, and if Ronnie has anything to add, I'll...
I think we'll just take questions.
All right. Questions? Anybody?
I just have a general question.
Good Lord, Supervisor Bagwell.
So we've had this grant since 2009. Can you tell me on the staff, is that an employee? How is the staff handled for this particular grant?
Yes, so the grant funds are nurse practitioner, which is a full-time position, and then 0.65 FTE of a nurse, 0.8 FTE of a front desk clerical person that does the check-in process. And then there's funds in it for Douglas County, and that funds their nurse practitioner.
And those are all city employees? Or
Those positions
contract?
have all been city employees
perfect.
since the introduction. Well, not since the introduction. At one point, they were contract staff with Physician Select Management, but since 2000, so for 4 years or 5 years, they've been all employees.
Okay, thank you so much.
So just to follow up on that, so these were city employees prior to this grant. They weren't people that were brought on to service the grant.
Oh, they worked for Physicians Management first.
Right.
Not us.
Right, but we didn't bring these people on specifically to handle this grant.
These folks were working in the grant. So the nurse practitioner was a contract position through Physician Select Management that did transition 4 years ago to a city employee.
Let me rephrase the question.
Yeah, please.
If the grant went away, would we retain these positions because of other duties that they perform for the city, or would these positions go away?
Thank you. If the grant went away, we would have to evaluate, and there would be the potential of a loss of positions.
All right. Public comment, anybody? I don't see any. Somebody want to motions in order? Supervisor Bagwell.
I move to approve Carson City Health and Human Services applying for the Office of the Assistant Secretary for Health Office of Population Affairs, federal funding opportunity number PA, I don't know if I can read without glasses there, PHP 18-001. Boy.
There's a motion and a second on the,
That is a mouthful.
on a motion. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Carried. Okay. Let's now take up item 16. Thank you, Nikki and Ronnie. Thank you very much. Okay. Let's take up this issue. We take up, I think, annually or biannually anyway. City officials, salary issues. What do we have to do here, or what do we don't do? Mr. Link, give us the ups and downs.
Jason Link, Chief Financial Officer. So this is an annual approval process in preparation for the budget. The NRS requires you to certify that funds are available to pay the elected officials' salaries.
The elected officials are?
We have the clerk, assessor, district attorney, treasurer, sheriff, and then the Board of Supervisors.
Okay. So then what we normally do is a motion that says we've got the funds, but then whether we want to participate is another question.
That is correct. And I will note for the record that we did identify an error in the 2018 amounts, And so the fiscal impact of the change is decreasing to $50,837.
For everybody, if everybody's weighed in?
Yes.
All right. Public comment? Anybody want to weigh in on this? Supervisor, Supervisor about it.
So if we choose not to participate, is now the time that we notify Human Resources that we do not want to participate?
That would be correct.
Okay.
It would, assuming your approval today, the amounts as presented would be built into the 2019 budget, but the actual payment to the individuals could be changed.
I think you have to give them a written statement so that their records are up to date on it. So, all right. Let's, I don't see any public comment. We'll entertain a motion to confirm that the funds are available. Let me see how that's said there, just a minute.
Sufficient financial resources.
Yeah. Okay, I think the motion, I mean, we can do that, but I think whoever makes the motion says that, that any elected official can forego the raise if they so choose.
I find that the city has sufficient financial resources to pay for the increased salaries for elected city officials and the Board of Supervisors for the fiscal year 2019, and move to approve the increase as outlined in state law, noting that any elected official can provide written notice to the Human Resources Department to forego the proposed salary increase for the fiscal year noted.
There's a motion and a second on the motion. Discussion?
Yes.
Discussions in order.
Just for the record, as I have each year for the last 6 years, I will forego any increase.
And I will state the same. I will forego the increase as I have through my entire term. 2 terms.
Anybody else want to weigh in?
Ditto, I will forego the increase.
All right. I haven't had an increase for 9 years, but that's fine with me.
I work more.
It's hard to go from, forget
Never
that.
mind.
Forget that. All right. On the motion, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Carried. Okay. Excuse me. Boy. All right. Now let's take up the next item on 16B. This is resolution creating the Arts and Culture Fund, a special revenue fund. Mr. Link, you want to take us through this? I know we've got a little bit of change to that. Tell us why, and we'll go. It seems like it's an administrative issue, but tell us what's going on.
This is a resolution to establish a fund for the arts and culture. This is based off of the modification to the agreement that the board implemented on March 1st, 2018 between the CTA and the city. This accounts for the 1% in the transient room tax that is dedicated for the arts and culture master plan and the cultural tourism campaign. This, I will note that tax expires on June 1st, 2021. The draft resolution did not specify that was the 1%. It was a more generic description. The addendum late material added that description into it, and it also added in that the fund would not be subject to the cost allocation plan as a component to that.
And this just implements, from an accounting standpoint, what this board voted on last month.
It does. We could implement this plan, or we could potentially create it within the general fund or the grants fund or something like that.
All right. Public comment? Anybody? Motion's in order. Somebody want to make a motion?
What's the resolution number?
2018 R5.
I move to adopt resolution number 2018 R5 with the amended description language, a resolution creating the Arts and Culture Fund, a special revenue fund.
There's a motion and a couple seconds on the motion. Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor, signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Carried unanimous. Thank you. Let's take up item 16, Charlie. This is potential amendments to the financial and budgetary policies for Carson City. Mr. Link, you want to take us through that and what your proposals are and why?
Sure. So Sure. This is an amendment to the financial and budgetary policies for Carson City. This is coming out of the discussion that we had, workshop styles discussion at the board retreat back in February, and implements several modifications. The significant changes include a general reference to sustainable infrastructure for asset management plans, general fund policy definition and purposes, revision to the reserve fund referencing specifically that it's the unrestricted fund balance, an asset management plan funding solution, and a fleet minimum funding provision. And then it also provides description into the budget augmentation process.
So I think you guys have got a great start on this. I think we still need a little bit more descriptions in some of the areas. And so one of the things throughout the policy, we refer to the IFC committee, and the definition really is just, the committee is kind of defined as who's on it inside of another section, and I really believe that should be pulled out to itself and defined and given what duties the IFC has, because I really believe we here at the board need to decide what duties that are the Board of Supervisors' jobs that we're either delegating or not going to delegate to IFC. And so for me, is currently the language says that if one of the departments feels they have an unforeseen or uncontrollable event or needs an enhancement to their budget, that they go to the IFC, who then approves that or disapproves it, whichever, and then we get a budget augmentation twice a year. My concern on that is I really don't have a choice when I get the augmentation if IFC has already approved it because the department has gone and spent the money. And so I just think we need a little more thought. I think they do a super job. They're, I know, taking the best interest of the city at heart, but I just don't feel it's appropriate that we don't really get a decision there because it's in an augmentation process. And so maybe we want to talk about a limit that we want to give them. You know, up, kind of like contracts, we let them do 25,000. I don't know, but I think we need some more discussion in some of these areas. Just a thought. I have a question on that.
John, go ahead then, John, Supervisor Barrett, go ahead.
Does that delay the ability to do business? That's my only concern.
Yeah, I think it would frequently delay the ability to do business. In order to get items agendized, get it in front of the board, I do believe that. I mean, is there an issue that I'm not aware of? Sounds like a solution, frankly, in search of a problem here.
I don't believe so.
Okay, Supervisor Barrett.
I have an idea.
Well, first of all, I tend to agree with Lori. I don't necessarily agree with the idea that it's a solution in search of a problem. I think it's a problem that needs to be addressed by this body, which are the elected officials, to make the decisions. I do understand that things come up that you have to do. Maybe we want to set up a level like the 25, whatever, but we should discuss it. Secondarily, of course, beating my old dead horse, I would like language inserted under B3, 1B3, nailing it down, saying replacement of aging and failing capital infrastructure, comma, including roads. We have a nickel for our deferred maintenance on all of our other assets. Our roads are an asset, and I'd like to have that in the policy.
And I don't have a problem, you get a break on an item and things like that. We have agendas twice, and I have no problem with us talking about a delegated authority for the city manager to say something was an emergency, and then he can just report that at the next meeting, so I certainly am not interested in hampering the ability of the city to deal with an issue. I just am not comfortable that we're not even aware until we get a budget augmentation of anything that's gone on. And I don't think, looking at the past histories, that everything has been an unforeseen or uncontrollable event that I've seen come through on our augmentations. And so I think we can work on this policy to make sure we cover just what he said. It's not meant to hamper something, but we meet twice a month, and you don't even have to do the augmentations. It can be an IFC report and recommendations. Here's the things from the last 2 weeks. I don't know how often you meet, but that you can bring forward that we could authorize, and then you gather it up and still do your augmentations only twice a year. I'm not interested in creating more paperwork there either, but I just think we need to look at it.
Do we know how many of these issues we're talking about actually call for an augmentation?
If you look back over our history, we've had quite a few in the augmentation twice a year.
We do augmentations twice a year.
How many come out of IFC issues?
Most of the augmentations come out of IFC.
Okay.
But it's hard to say the IFC generally meets on a weekly basis, but it's hard to say how many of those on average on a week actually have an augmentation component to it. So generally it's not very many that require an augmentation. Most of it's just staffing.
Positions have, well, and this doesn't even say, but positions come to us anyway, and that should also be stated in the policy.
Positions definitely are going to come to the board. Any type of an FTE comes to the board. I mean, the internal city functioning IFC is modeled on exactly how the state does it. So, I mean, there's precedence for allowing the chief executive to execute the budget authority. You do approve things like the contingency and break-fix amount. When we talk about augmentation, the vast majority of the funding generally comes from one or two of those places. It's just normal day-to-day operations of city government. Presumably, if you don't approve the augmentation at one of the semi-annual points in the year, then that department would have to go in and cut their budget and find the money. So it's not like you're being presented a fait accompli, so to speak. I mean, it's just normal business. There's plenty of precedence for it. Obviously, I'll execute whatever policy the board implements, but to me, this really sounds like this just be unnecessary work. I mean, if we bring a request to augment the sheriff for additional money for the jail, for him to be able to provide food, right? That's kind of a common type IFC request. The board's going to actually debate that or turn it down. So, I mean, I don't know. I think you're getting into a lot more than that's just daily operations.
Well, as I understand it, I mean, I don't know that much about it, but I'll just say, what I'm understanding from the conversation is that nobody wants to get in the weeds in terms of your ability to operate the city. I think, maybe, if there's a limit or there's an augmentation amount, if it's going to lead to an augmentation or there's some form of dollar amount, that might work. I don't know, but I don't think anybody's trying to say, you can't on a daily basis without going to us, to fix what the sheriff's got going on there or fix other things. I mean, right now you bring employee issues back to us. I think, that's a big issue, and we want to make sure, and I think you want to do it as well, make sure, that we're not overstaffing as we grow in this thing and when the economy moves forward. I think, we need to find a way where there's a line that says, okay, IFC, if there's a big issue, maybe you need to bring it to us. And so some thought into that. I mean, that's just what I'm hearing here. So let's go down to Supervisor Barrett. I mean, he said he's a light on, then Supervisor Bunkowski.
Yeah, I was going to keep my mouth shut until our city manager, whom I think does great work, brought up the state. I have a criticism of the state of Nevada for working somewhat the same system. The difference there, though, is that they're IFC-type organization has a bunch of state legislators on it. There's nobody from this body who sits on the IFC here. And they only meet once every other year, which I could criticize till the cows come home, but they're not going to listen to me. The truth of the matter is, though, we meet almost every 2 weeks, twice a month, and we're here. So we should be informed immediately, not, as Lori said, twice a year.
Well, I mean, again, very often you are being informed. For example, if we have to replace an air handler at the public safety complex, and that's a $75,000 project, that's coming to the board.
I'm not
We're going to pay for it out of
criticizing
contingency.
you, I'm just looking
What you're
down the
asking,
road.
but Supervisor Barrett, what you're asking is to have decision authority on whether I'm going to spend money out of break fix or contingency. I respectfully disagree. That is what you're saying here. You want to be able to say, we don't think you should pay for this out of break fix. Well, I mean, you approve the break fix budget, you approve the contingency budget, and that is the intent. And if there is one item that any of you can point out that you thought is odd, then I'd like to know about it right now.
I think you've done a great job on looking to the future. We won't have the same city manager for the next 50 years. At least, I guess we won't. I'm not sure.
He's ageless. Well, I think that, and the Supervisor Bonkowski knows he's going to weigh in. He's probably got it. I think, the issue is, I'm not so certain we want to transfer decision-making, because I don't think anybody's wanting to get into, we hire you to run the staff. I mean, we're the policy side of the stuff here, but Supervisor Bonkowski.
Yeah, just listening to the conversation, during the legislative session, we have a standing agenda item for you to communicate items that come up that we should be aware of, because things move very quickly. If I'm understanding Lori and John correctly, it seems like this would be a similar situation where if we had a standing agenda item for IFC or budget augmentation issues, it's more about clear and transparent communication and not overriding your ability to run the city. So I am a very detail-oriented person, and I appreciate having knowledge as quickly as possible. I'm not trying to second-guess what you're doing, but I would like to know about it, because sometimes I get blindsided by people that ask me questions about things that I don't know about, and then I have to get on the phone with you to find out about them. So for me, it's more of a communications issue and not an authoritarian issue. So I think that I would support maybe, a standing agenda item where you could communicate to us if something comes up, and that's really all I'm looking for.
I could go with that. It's really, again, we have no idea where the contingency sits at all. We have no idea how much you have or haven't got as a running total against the contingency, because in our minds, we may want to make a decision to authorize an expenditure out of the contingency, but without the knowledge of where we are, maybe we want to, I'm going to give one to John. Maybe it's, close to the end of the fiscal year, and the contingency we think has $500,000 in it because we haven't seen anything coming out, and we want to move it to roads. And then we're going to find out 2 weeks later on an augmentation that, nope, $300,000 has gone out of the contingency. So that's what I'm talking about. And maybe it's just the spreadsheet that shows us where we're at on the break fix account and the contingency account. And it can just sit on as one of your city manager report, like you're going to do today, right? Couldn't we have that as a sitting agenda item where you say, hey, haven't done anything, we're still at $500,000? Just information.
IFC does more than just that, I think.
Right,
I mean, so I'm
But I'm concerned about the money.
I got you. But if we're just talking about the contingency amount and the break fix, I get it. But if there's other things that are going on, I really don't want to hamper. I mean, because I get the fact, that we want to know what's going on, but I don't think that the budget process, to me, as we implement it here, does a pretty good job of letting us and the public know where we are on all these things. Now, we could have more real-time information, I guess. I guess in a sense, we're moving towards that. But I don't want, I can live with, with interim reports, but I don't know how far we want to go down that road. I mean, we can have that, but if it gets into a point where we're making decisions on, IFC, at those meetings, I think we're on a dangerous track. So, I mean, I think, my own sense is we can try doing this, every other board meeting, once a month you do an IFC report. What are the big things that came to IFC? And just let us know that. And then if there's nothing that happened, just say nothing of consequence, and we can do that. I mean, I don't, but, if there's a fair amount of money that's being spent or there's a large item, probably need to know about it.
I just wanted to add that there's a lot of different scenarios that happen at IFC, and it's kind of hard to pin down the contingency amount. A lot of times, like for instance, the sheriff comes in and his, the food supplies at the jail are coming in higher than anticipated. And so he comes in to give us a heads up. He tries to absorb that in other areas of his budget. And then at IFC, we approve, try to absorb it in your budget, whatever you can, and then we could augment, that last augmentation in June. So it's not always easy to pin down that contingency number, but I guess we could say potentially this much would come from contingency.
I'm just interested in understanding, because when we budget, information is the only way I can make good decisions. And I feel just sometimes that, like Brad says, I can be on the street somewhere and somebody will come and tell me something that's happening in the city, and I go, really? How do you know that? I don't know that. Well, it's because of an action that came through IFC, and I'm not saying it's bad or that you're making poor decisions. It doesn't have anything to do with that. It's the ability for the public to understand what changed, right? Nothing. A budget is a plan. You're absolutely right. Nothing's going to be perfect. But I think it's important for us to know what did we plan well and what didn't go as well as anticipated, right? And maybe even somebody's ahead of the game and doing better than their budget. And you're right. You might take it from one area and give it to another because somebody did well. But I just feel that the budget is the responsibility, the appropriation of the money is the responsibility of this board. And that's just what I believe. But we also, do you want some other things, just in case they want to work on some other areas to rework? I noticed that the litigation claim settlement authority where we granted, in the prior policy, we granted the DA's office the amount that could be settled. Again, we had a threshold. I don't see that. It's left out of the policy here. And so I'm just wondering on that. And then did we take the enterprise fund discussions to the UFOC to make sure this was going to meet their requirements? Because I know they were
I went
working
to
on
the
that.
UFC and we discussed the changes. There are no substantive changes within the enterprise fund presentation here.
Okay.
But the discussion that I had with UFOC was that we would come back with a change to the policies recommending this more specifics that they're looking for through that process.
So
the information
basic work has been done.
The information that you have here has no changes to the previous policies.
So they want potentially some more changes.
They want changes as well.
So maybe we just kind of can give some comments and you bring this back anyway and you guys think about it and have the UFOC give us potential changes in the enterprise fund area. And then in the debt service, I wanted you to just take a look at number 11 and number 12, just to see again the way it's worded, because it kind of repeats into the capital budget process, and that we get the right wording in the right sections would be helpful. And then in the capital budget process, page 320 of the packet. It lists that the capital requests are presented to the CIP committee, comprised of directors and elected officials. I think we need to define that the Board of Supervisors does not sit on that. That except Board of Supervisors. Yeah, I don't want anyone to think we see it in advance. And then more just a question on the major and minor capital expenditures and stuff. How did we determine that 15,000 is the break point for major versus minor? Back at a different.
That amount can definitely be revisited. I think it was just put into place several years ago, and it's worked all right all these years, so we just hadn't looked into changing it. But
Wouldn't capital versus operational be determined by useful life and not by dollar amount?
right. Or if it's over the threshold of 5,000, it has to be more than $5,000 and more than a year in useful life to be capital, so we could define it more specifically that way.
Okay, well, I think, Jason, take a look at these, and I don't know what the UFOC said. I mean, from my own personal standpoint, I want to see the policies, but I don't want to hamstring the ability of the city to operate on a timely basis. And so I want to make sure that, there's a line between policy and the city where city manager run government, and they should have the ability to move. And so, if we can provide some additional transparency, if we think that's necessary here, that's fine. But I don't think that, we ought to be involved in the day-to-day decision-making of how government's run. I mean, we set the policies, we approve the budget, and we expect people to comply with it. So, I think it's good to clarify some of these things, but that's my own 2 cents. So take a look at where that is, kind of keep at least those thoughts in mind. I think maybe you got some feeling from other board members here that they maybe want to get a little closer, but we'll have that discussion. But I think, I think the overriding thing is, there has to be one transparency, which I don't think there's been a problem yet, but doesn't hurt to identify, where transparency exists, or shouldn't exist, or exists. But I think, there's a line there that says, I don't want to get involved in every, and I don't want people to think that they can go to IFC, and if they can't get it on IFC, they're going to come up here. I mean, they got to have some ability, the manager's got to have some ability to operate. But if people think that, hey, you know what, if I'm going to get beat at IFC, but I'm just going to raise it at the board level, I think we're on a dangerous track. I think we either let these guys manage it, and if they don't manage it right, they're gone. And if they do, then we go down that road. So that's my own 2 cents. So, okay. All right.
Mayor, if I could just chime in too, when Jason is drafting that new draft, to keep in mind too that there are some personnel issues that do come before IFC that may not be public, and so those are the types of things that maybe we might not bring to you if that's what is decided.
Yeah, I'm not interested in everything that IFC does coming to this board. I hope I need to be clearer on that. I'm interested in IFC being defined as to what its duties are, so that, one, you can ensure that everything's following the correct open meeting laws. All of those things are handled. Like you said, I don't want personnel confidential. None of that belongs in that arena. So I think that you guys can, the DA's office and Jace can work together.
Well, I think there's nothing wrong with identifying what IFC is, what the parameters of IFC. There's nothing wrong with that.
Sure, and we'll be able, Nancy is getting ready to do what's going to be a city manager's update. We have there's no issue, no pushback at all providing information as to items that have been approved that are going to require augmentation at the next augmentation cycle. And I don't want to repeat myself, but I just want to point out again, when you do approve a contract that's being funded from contingency, you're going to that item had been approved at IFC, and you're going to see that at augmentation for that department's budget. I mean, so a lot of this you're already seeing. I mean, if we're gonna write a contract for a new air handler, for example, that department's budget will be augmented for that, but you approve the contract. So, anyway.
All right, we'll take a cut at driving what IFC does, okay? Putting the, describing a little bit more in detail what IFC does, and we'll go from there.
We will make some changes and bring it back to you.
Okay. All right. Got enough? Got enough, Jason?
So,
yeah.
Mr. Mayor, for the next agenda item, Egglet Prince is not here yet. They were inbound from the airport. So my recommendation is either, depending on what the mayor and the board want to do, take a break, or we can proceed with Nancy's presentation out of order and then come back to the
Proceed
Egglet.
with Nancy out of order. Are you out of order today?
She was born out of this.
All right, the Good News Nancy show is back. Oh.
Plug it out. The video cable.
Oh. That would help.
It's pretty bad when I have to
Yeah.
explain technology.
Yeah. Well, we're almost all prepared. There we go. All right, so this is the first of a monthly city manager updates that we'll be doing to keep the board and the community informed of the current city projects and activities going around and events in Carson City. All right, so upcoming events on April 19th, we'll have the fiscal year 19 Carson City tentative budget will be presented to the board. And any changes to that tentative budget that are approved on the 19th will be incorporated into the final budget that will be presented at a special meeting on May 21st. And then we have the Freedom Monument Project at the Carson City Public Safety Complex Plaza, and that's scheduled to be completed the week of May 4th. And it'll be followed with a dedication ceremony, and once we have the date nailed down, we'll update you on that. So as everyone probably already knows, the city was notified back in March that we'd been awarded a $7.5 million Transportation Investment Generating Economic Recovery Grant, otherwise known as the Tiger Grant, from the U.S. Department of Transportation. So that funding will allow the city to complete the Carson City Gateway, the South Carson Street Complete Streets project from 5th Street south to the I-580 bypass. So the U.S. Secretary of Transportation, Elaine Chao, and Senator Heller were here in Carson City yesterday to present the award, and city staff did an excellent job in organizing the event. I think everyone was very impressed, including the secretary herself. So, and then in addition to the Tiger Grant that they announced yesterday, they also announced that the city would be awarded approximately $447,000 in grant funds to purchase 2 new jack buses for the city's transit system. So next, the construction on the downtown Curry Streetscape Improvement Project is anticipated to begin at the end of April or the beginning of May. The city held a pre-construction meeting for the public on March 22nd, and the city and the contractor will be working very closely with the surrounding businesses throughout the project. Phase 2 of the Water Resource Recovery Facility is scheduled to go out to bid in April this month, and construction is anticipated to begin in July of 2018. And the city's application for the Nevada Federal Lands Access Program, or the FLAP grant, to improve roadway condition and safety along Kings Canyon Road, and also to increase parking capacity at the Kings Canyon Trailhead, was accepted into the short list of potential projects. And that the estimated project cost is $2.9 million, with just a city match of 5%, which is around $145,000. So now on to community development.
Where is that again on that? What? Give me the parameters of where that's going to be.
That's Upper
Kings Canyon.
Upper Kings Canyon?
If you're familiar where the big washout was last year, so that's been a priority, getting the funding for us to repair that washout. For us, that's an important connector to other trail networks. So we're very happy about this. We still have a ways to go to actually get it, but I think we're on the road here, so to speak.
And the Forest Service knows that we're fixing the road that's on their property.
I think the money, I think the source of it is federal money to begin with.
Okay, all right, very good.
All right, now on to community development and some of the construction projects that are going on around the city. So first we have the building permit valuation. And for February, we had 7.2 million in building permits issued. At the time that I did this, we didn't have March's information, but now we do. And for March, it was $5.8 million, for a total of $16.4 million for the first 3 months of the calendar year. $10.5 million is for residential, 1.8 is for new commercial, and approximately $4 million in commercial remodel and miscellaneous. So these are the number of residential permits that have been issued. And as of February, we had 18 single-family permits. And the March information is an additional 14 single-family and 3 multifamily, for a total of 42 residential permits issued for the calendar year.
A question in there. When you bring us the building permits like this that you're doing, would you give us out of the total that's authorized? Because I think often, the public gets really confused that we authorize, 600 or 400, just to keep us, add that as a component that out of the possible number of, because they're always worried on water and all these other things, but we've never hit that mark. So.
All right, so next, this is Phase 1 of the Lampa Ranch development, which is for 189 residential units. A materials storage grading permit has been issued, allowing them to receive fill from the Carson Hills Apartments, which is behind the Fandango Galaxy Theaters. In addition, permits for drainage improvements.
So Nancy, can I stop you there for a second? So we had an issue come up in front of us last year that the landfill, Carson City landfill, needed cover dirt. Were we aware that this fill dirt was out there, and did we have a conversation about maybe trying to get fill dirt from construction sites? Because just if you can make a note of it and look into it, because if we're going to have to go out and pay for cover, we should probably be checking this to see if there's fill dirt available from new construction that we can grab.
Just an aside, since you're bringing this up, with the upcoming atmospheric river, is the retention pond at the base of Curry Street, at the base of that project, being addressed? It's relatively full right now, and I know
exactly what you're talking about, but I don't know if it's going to be addressed before tomorrow night and Saturday morning. I'll check on that. I'll talk to the Public Works Director, because I think we did have a little bit of, 2 weeks ago, we did have a little bit of a problem there. Yeah.
Well, we're talking about atmospheric floods. I made one last year. I was in Cuba for the second one, and this time I'm at my wife's high school reunion in Fresno Friday night, so.
Really, Bob?
And, it's one of those things where,
Be ready, Karen.
anyway, thanks.
Nothing like a wife for.
Spend the night.
I know, man. All right,
What
thanks.
is it about that?
All right, so this next slide is the tentative subdivision map for Phase 2 of the Lomba Ranch development for 209 lots. It's tentatively scheduled for review by the Planning Commission on April 25th, pending updated grading from the applicant. And then this will be presented to the board the following month in May. So these are the Carson Hills apartments that we were just discussing up by the Galaxy Theaters. They have requested a special use permit for an additional 70 units to the existing 310-unit approved apartment complex on Clearview Drive. This site, if you remember, had been originally planned for a hotel. And so this is scheduled for review by the Planning Commission on April 25th. This is the Arbor Villas, which is off Little Lane for 147 townhomes, and building permits are under review for the first phase of the townhomes. This is the Mills Landing project, which is off of East William Street, and this is for 105 residential lots. Building permits for the townhomes are under review, pending final submittals from the applicant.
Actually, on that one, Nancy, the first 4 units are under construction.
Oh. And the first 4 units are under construction.
I saw that this morning getting my coffee.
Oh, my backup Lee was supposed to be here, but because we switched it up. All right, this is a site improvement permit has been issued for Jackson Village on Eagle Station Lane, and it's behind Kohl's. This is planned for 41 residential units. All right, we're done with community development. On to Parks and Recreation and Open Space. The Parks Department is trying to obtain grant funding and also working closely with Nevada Land Trust in an attempt to acquire 206 acres of land on the west side. There has been some progress made on this, and an update should be brought to the board either April 19th or the first meeting in May. And the license agreement with Duncan Golf Management for the operation and management and maintenance of the Eagle Valley Golf Course became effective on April 1st. And from what I've heard, everything has been going well out there. I guess no news is good news. Just a couple other items. We issued the $4,875,000 in bonds for the stormwater drainage projects on March 13th. We received an interest rate of 3.3%, and the annual debt service payments will be approximately $366,000 per year through fiscal year 3038.
So we did not do the refunding bond?
We have not done the refunding yet.
Okay.
I don't know, it might still be in the works, we haven't moved forward with it.
Okay.
Does the new federal law allow us to do refunding and still be tax exempt?
Yes, there's different scenarios in which you can do the refunding. Oh, I think that the one that they're planning is not going to be tax exempt, but I'll get more information from finance.
In the omnibus bill? Because I thought that was being discussed, that we couldn't, the refunding was not going to be.
I think you can do it if it's
All right.
not,
Well, you guys
as
are
long
the
as it's
experts on
not
it, but I
tax
mean-
exempt, or if it could be called within a certain period of time.
Okay, all right.
So lastly, the city's been working with our insurance broker in negotiating the renewals for the employee and retiree health, dental, and life insurance. And at this point, the increase is not expected to be more than 5%, and we'll be bringing those renewals back to the board in June. I believe we've built 10% into the budget, so any excess goes towards our OPEB trust fund to fund the retiree health insurance benefits. And that's all I had.
I would recommend a short break, Mr. Mayor.
All right.
I think our presenters have just gotten here.
Okay, we'll be in recess until we call, probably 10 minutes maybe. So let's go stand at ease or what are we going to do? All right, thanks. the meeting of the Board of Supervisors back to order.
Maybe he's John's James or something.
All right, we're at the end of today's agenda, with the exception of the item number 17. It's my intention to hear the presentation from the Eglin Prince Law Firm, and I know they got Billy Bradley with them here today too, and then answer any questions we've got, and then we'll let us take it under advisement. So we're going from there, okay? What do you want to bring started? Did I say enough?
I think you said enough. Just a reminder that the first item before the board is for presentation only. No action can be taken on this item.
Yeah, and I think, on the second item, there's a potential action. I think, we'll see where we go, but I think that our best bet is to just hear what we got and see what the questions are before we take any formal motion, but we'll go down that road, so.
Very well, Your Honor.
All right. Let's, who wants to go? Mr. Eglin, good afternoon, good morning. Mr. Bradley, how are you?
Board of Supervisors, pleasure to be here this morning.
There we go. Okay. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for allowing us to present with you today. I think most of you know Mr. Bradley, who we are co-counseling with the Bradley Janae Drendel firm with respect to the opiate cases we're handling in the northern counties in Nevada because of their long-standing presence up here and knowing the counties well. I'd like to start out.
I've seen him at work.
Yeah, I've heard that. I'd like to start out by pointing out that our communities, our cities, and our country, in our view, is facing the worst domestic crisis of our generation. And this crisis was caused by the opiate manufacturers and distributors. The opiate manufacturers and distributors had the motive and they had the means to cause this crisis. The motive was exorbitant profits, and the means was prescription opiates. And when you add the drug companies' motive to their means, this results in the largest drug epidemic in our country's history. 2 decades ago, they began the most aggressive pharmaceutical marketing campaign in U.S. history to dupe the American public and the medical community into believing that opiates were safe to prescribe for chronic pain. Before the mid-1990s, opiates were only prescribed under 3 narrow circumstances. 1, end-of-life care for very painful terminal diseases. 2, severe acute injury and pain, but only for a short period of time, a matter of days. And 3, very rare and unique cases of extreme chronic pain. In the mid-1990s, the opiate drug manufacturers started convincing doctors that opiates should be prescribed for everyday chronic pain because they claimed, 1, that less than 1% of patients would become addicted, 2, that the addiction could be easily managed, and 3, that as long as the patient's pain was real, they would not become addicted. All of this was a lie. And it's best summed up by a letter from August of 2016 sent by the U.S. Surgeon General to the American medical community, where he wrote, quote, "Nearly 2 decades ago, we were encouraged to be more aggressive about treating pain, often without enough training and support to do so safely. This coincided with heavy marketing of opiates to doctors. Many of us were even taught, incorrectly, that opiates are not addictive when prescribed for legitimate pain. Drug manufacturers know that doctors rely on the information that the drug companies provide them for prescribing purposes. So the opiate manufacturers developed the most aggressive drug marketing scheme ever seen to persuade doctors and patients to use opiates for everyday chronic pain. This scheme allowed the opiates to be prescribed to a much larger group of patients exponentially increasing the size of the market. Drug companies spent tens of millions of dollars in marketing to provide false information about the benefits of long-term opiate use by, one, overstating the information about the benefits of opiates for chronic pain, two, claiming that opiate dependence and withdrawal are easily managed, and three, downplaying the risk of addiction. Unfortunately, their scheme worked. In the last 2 decades, the amount of opiates sold in the United States has more than quadrupled. Over 300 million prescriptions for opiates were written in the year 2016 alone, and that's more opiate prescriptions than the total number of adult Americans. There has been a 450% increase in opiate prescription sales since 1999 without any overall change in reported pain. Opiates are now the most commonly prescribed medication in the United States. Chances of addiction increases significantly after only the 3rd day of a prescription. As many as 1 in 4 receiving long-term opiate therapy in primary care settings struggle with opiate addiction today. Fatally injured drivers who tested positive for opiates rose 700% from 1995 to 2015, just in that 1 decade. Now, over 2 million people in America are addicted to prescription opiates, and this is significantly contributing to increased heroin use. Nearly 80% of new heroin users took prescription opiates before starting heroin. People addicted to prescription opiates are 40 times more likely to become addicted to heroin. And in 2015, there were nearly 13,000 heroin overdose deaths in the United States. The most recent figures from the CDC suggest that over 175 Americans die every day from an opiate overdose. Drug overdose deaths are now the leading cause of injury and death in the United States. Not guns, like we've heard some people saying, it is opiates, overdoses. In 2016 alone, the number of overdose deaths in the United States was higher than the number of Americans that died in the Vietnam War. And the number of overdose deaths increased last year. Since 2000, over 340,000 Americans have died from opiate overdoses. And on the current track we're on right now, within 6 to 7 years, that number will be over 1 million Americans dead from opiate overdoses. Opioid addiction impacts all people, regardless of race, gender, socioeconomic background, or political affiliation. What's very disturbing is that the opiate drug companies actually targeted our veterans. A book called Exit Wounds, published in 2009, was written, sponsored, and distributed by an opiate drug company, Purdue Pharmaceuticals. It was allegedly written as a personal narrative of a veteran, but it was actually written by the drug company and promoted as a personal narrative of a veteran. It describes opiates in the book as the gold standard of pain medication and that it increases a person's level of functioning. It also minimizes the risk of opiate addiction. The drug company propaganda in Exit Wounds is contrary to the scientific and medical evidence, and the drug companies knew this. According to a published study in the 2013 Journal of American Medicine, veterans returning from Iraq and Afghanistan who were prescribed opiates had higher incidences of adverse clinical outcomes, overdoses, and self-inflicted injuries. A report published in November 2017 by the President's Economic Advisory Council concluded that in 2015 alone, the estimated economic impact of the opiate crisis was $504 billion or 2.8% of the U.S.'s gross domestic product for that same year. Today on the plane right up here, I read something that they're projecting that last year's economic impact on this country was over $700 billion. These are defense spending type numbers we're talking about that this crisis has caused. According to the Nevada Substance Abuse Working Group 2017 report, there were 94 painkiller prescriptions for every 100 Nevada residences. Now that's up from 87.5 per 100 residents in 2016, 81 per 100 residents in 2015, and 78 per 100 residents in 2013. So they're climbing. And Nevada ranks second highest for hydrocodone, second highest for oxycodone, fourth highest for methadone, and seventh highest for codeine. Nevada has the fourth highest drug overdose mortality rate in the United States. County and city governments and the services they provide their citizens have been strained to the breaking point by this public health crisis. Human services, social services, court services, law enforcement services, the offices of the coroner, medical examiner, and health services, including hospital, emergency, and ambulatory services, have all been severely impacted by this crisis. From 2013 to 2015, there were this is just one example from Southern Nevada. From 2013 to 2015, there were over 1,700 emergency room visits and over 1,700 inpatient hospitalizations annually for opiate-related issues in Southern Nevada, costing $107 million per year. $107 million per year would provide 4,200 people with inpatient treatment at an average price 28-day rehab facility. The drug companies knew their marketing and the way opiates were prescribed was contrary to the scientific and medical evidence, and their misrepresentations have been confirmed by the FDA and the CDC. The opiate drug distributors are equally responsible and legally liable for the opiate drug epidemic. In 1970, Congress enacted the Controlled Substance Act that created a closed system for distribution of controlled substances. This law prevents drug manufacturers from selling directly to pharmacies and retailers. This law requires that drug distributors act as the gatekeeper between the manufacturer and the pharmacies and retailers. Under this law, drug distributors have a legal duty to identify, investigate, and report suspicious orders of opiates. Suspicious orders of opiates include 1, the unusual size of the order, 2, the unusual frequency of the order, and 3, the unusual pattern of the order. There are over 800 registered drug distributors in the United States. However, only 3 of these companies control 85% of the market. The big 3 are McKesson, Cardinal Health, and AmerisourceBergen. For several years, the big 3 have failed their gatekeeper duty because they have not been reporting suspicious opiate orders to the authorities. In January 2017, McKesson, the largest drug distributor in the United States, was fined $150 million by the federal government for its blatant failure to report suspicious orders in violation of federal law. Cardinal Health, another member of the Big 3, was fined $44 million for its own failure to report suspicious opiate orders to the DEA. Not only have they failed to report, but they continue to ship millions of pills into U.S. communities, including Nevada communities. Each of the big 3 opiate distributors generate over $100 billion in annual revenue. The opiate manufacturers and distributors had the motive and the means to cause this crisis. However, our cities, our counties, and our states have the motive and the means to solve this crisis. Over 400 lawsuits have been filed by various cities, counties, and states around the country. Each Nevada county, in our view, is wise to bring its own case in Nevada state courts because, one, we have a more favorable forum in our state district courts where jurisdiction for these cases reside. Two, each city or county will have more control over the litigation. Three, the city council or county commissioners will have discretion over how settlement proceeds are allocated instead of depending on money trickling down from the state legislature. And four, the counties and cities are likely to have larger settlement amounts if they pursue litigation on their own. Nevada has the best pharmaceutical liability laws in the country for plaintiffs. I've been doing pharmaceutical cases for decades here in our state, and they're much more consumer-friendly in our state than they are in many other states. And for example, Nevada has not adopted the learned intermediary doctrine, which allows the drug companies in many states to simply blame the prescribing doctors. And Nevada has no cap on punitive damages in pharmaceutical liability cases. Carson City, we believe, should hire outside counsel and file its own case in our state courts. Causes of action for Carson City would include public nuisance, unjust enrichment, restitution, negligence, and engaging in abnormally dangerous activity by the pharmaceutical manufacturers and distributors. Damages for the counties and the cities include past damages for the money that Carson City has already expended to combat the opiate epidemic. It is, and I guarantee you, it's pretty much touched all your social services and impacted them, as well as your, the criminal services and the jails and the first responders, everything up and down the ladder. It has impacted. We know for a fact that in the counties in Nevada that it is 25 to 35% of the criminal justice budget has been taken up by this problem over the last 15 years. And this includes EMS and first responders expenses, including Narcan. And Narcan is a drug that reverses the effects of an opiate overdose. And the cost of Narcan varies from $150 to $4,000 per dose. The city is also entitled to recoup expenses for law enforcement and jailing, drug courts, substance abuse programs, increased expenses associated with child welfare, as well as any other expenses the city or county has incurred associated with the opiate epidemic. Future damages would include damages for education, educate your citizens on the problem, drug rehabilitation, because the only thing that works is inpatient. This disease is curable, but the only thing that works is inpatient drug rehabilitation, and it's expensive. The average 28-day drug rehab center is roughly $25,000 for a 28-day stay. Most times, only 28 days doesn't work. It takes longer. Down in Clark County, it's $40,000 for a 28-day stay on average. Medical monitoring for its citizens for this problem, and future costs to continue to provide services and programs associated with the health consequences of the opiate epidemic, as well as punitive damages and an order restricting future marketing practices by the opiate drug companies. Carson City is not at risk, nor will any of its resources have to be used to prosecute this case. Our firms will advance all cost for the litigation, work on a contingency fee, and take all the risk. I'll let Mr. Bradley talk about his firm. I'm going to brag a little bit about the accomplishments of our firm a little bit so you know who we are. We've handled many large cases against drug manufacturers and distributors over the years. We're very familiar with the pharmaceutical industry, their business practices, the potential defendants in this case, and the law firms that represent them. In fact, two of the major defendants, which are McKesson and Teva, were the two primary defendants in the hepatitis C litigation we handled down in Clark County. Those were the two major defendants that we took on in that case. And we have been successful against these pharmaceutical companies every time we have gone against them. We have obtained the largest injury verdicts in the country twice, in 2010 and in 2013. We obtained the third largest verdict in the country in 2011 and the 39th largest verdict in the country in 2007. I'm the only trial lawyer in the country to ever obtain the largest injury verdict in America twice, the only trial lawyer in America to obtain two verdicts in the top 5 in 2 consecutive years, and the only trial lawyer in America to obtain verdicts in the top 5 in the country in 3 out of 4 consecutive years. I've obtained more multi-million-dollar verdicts than any lawyer in Nevada history, and I am the only lawyer in Nevada to ever be named Trial Lawyer of the Year twice. I was honored as National Trial Lawyer of the Year in 2013 and National Lawyer of the Year in 2010. In 2014, the National Law Journal named my firm as one of the 12 best injury law firms in America and also named us as one of the 50 best trial firms in the country. Our reputation benefits our clients because it leads to larger settlements and usually quicker resolution. 3 of our senior partners, including myself, are lifelong residents of Nevada. This is our home. This case is personal to us. We have all seen firsthand family members, neighbors, friends, co-workers, people we go to church with who have been impacted and families devastated by this crisis. I don't often say a case is personal to me. This one is personal. What these drug companies have done to our communities. And I know it's bad in Clark County, and I know it's bad in Washoe County, but it's much worse in the rurals. We've visited some of these rural communities and we've looked at their data, and it's much worse. I talked about the number of prescriptions per 100 residents, and those residents include children, by the way. For example, in Nye County, it's 155 opiate prescriptions per 100 residents. So we've talked to some of these rural counties where they've told us it has wiped out generations, this epidemic. So something needs to be done, and we'd like to be able to help do that. We're a local firm with strong relationships with the Nevada judiciary. There's probably no lawyer in Nevada that has more history and more relationship with the Nevada judiciary than Bill Bradley, quite frankly. And he and I have been friends for many, many years and worked together on many cases. We are prepared to allocate all the resources of our firm necessary to litigate this case to conclusion. And I'd be happy to answer any questions. I'd like Mr. Bradley to be able to say a few words.
Good morning, Bill Bradley, for your record. I'm not going to talk much about my firm. For those of you that know me, you know my firm and you know me, and we let our work generally do the talking. But there is something that I think is really important to you as a Board of Supervisors for representing your constituents. You are probably aware, I hope you're aware, that there is a companion type of litigation that is being brought by several attorney generals, including ours. And that's called MDL litigation, multi-district litigation. And quite frankly, that's the easy way out. That case is currently being presented in a federal courtroom in Cleveland. And if we were to be like most of the other law firms that are jumping on this particular issue, we would file these cases in federal court. And as soon as they were filed, because the federal court has a way of consolidating all the cases that are filed in federal court across the nation, and they have a process where they select a venue, which the federal MDL commission selected Cleveland in this case, And then all the judges say, once you get your cases in your particular federal jurisdiction, we're going to transfer them all to Cleveland. And we'll let Cleveland worry about it. Well, I don't think that that serves your constituents. And for bringing this lawsuit, we are fortunate in Nevada because we know there are some major distributors located in Nevada that we are entitled to name in the lawsuit. When you are able to name a Nevada corporation as a defendant, that destroys the ability for our case to be moved into the federal court system, which means we can file this case in Carson City, we can file Humboldt's case in Humboldt County, we can file Yarrington's case in Lyon County and let your citizens listen to the evidence and make a decision on how these actors' conduct impacted your community. And I hope you all realize how powerful that is. And that is something that the manufacturers have got to be concerned about and watching very closely. So when, and I hope perhaps there are some questions about this MDL and how does this interact with the MDL, because we can talk about that. But when these manufacturers and distributors understand that the communities that they destroyed are going to be listening to the evidence against them, I think they're going to think very long and hard whether they want to allow Nevada to become the precedent-setting set of cases that are going to carry forward in this country. And you're in a very unique opportunity being Nevada elected officials to have the ability to bring this case in your constituents' courtrooms. With that, I will stop, and hopefully that gives you some indication of why that's important.
Well, Billy, you're on the other side of the table this time, so I'm going to work on you.
That's fair, Mr. Kroll, Mayor Kroll.
I'm not going to work on you, but I appreciate you allowing us to answer some questions. But let me just throw some out there. And if I'm stepping on your territory, you let me know. Okay. First, just as the bullet points of the potential retainer agreement, it would be a 25% recovery. Bob,
25% contingency, yeah.
Okay, correct. Contingency. And two, there would be your firm or your consortium of both firms there would be responsible for paying our costs of document preparation and time out in order to litigate. Is that
Yes,
correct?
those are recoverable costs, which we could reimburse the county for as they occur, and we'd recover those costs at the end of the case.
And if there were an adverse judgment against us, what would happen then in terms of attorney's fees or
Well,
costs?
we have offered an indemnification clause to the city. Mayor, as I told you last time we talked about this, I've been suing pharmaceutical companies for over 2 decades. I have never seen a better liability case against the pharmaceutical industry in my career, and I've done a lot of pharmaceutical cases. This is, for liability purposes, the horse has already left the barn. We've already had multiple executives from these pharmaceutical companies have to plead guilty to felony criminal charges because of this, what they did in this marketing scheme here. There's no doubt there's liability. It's just a matter of working on the damages, making sure we have all the damages put together and litigating the case. Now, they're not going to lay down, believe me, they're going to litigate these cases, and they may make us try a few. But, I mean, that's how confident I've told you, we're putting up $15 million of our own money in cost to back up this case, as well as being willing to indemnify the counties and cities for any adverse judgment that could be found against them.
And if the case is, I know you talked, Bill, you talked about removal to the federal court. What happens if it does get removed to federal court? And what then happens?
So let me tell you what's happening. We're not just ignoring the MDL. The Skikos law firm out of San Francisco, Steve Skikos, who Bill and I both know well, he is the lead liaison counsel that has been appointed by the court for the MDL. So we are working with the MDL lawyers. They actually want us to pursue a state strategy. We've had success in the past of pursuing state strategies, and normally what happens is because we're much more successful in Nevada about keeping the cases in state court. And what happens is we'll go get verdicts. We did this in the Actos litigation, for example, against Takeda Pharmaceutical, a Japanese pharmaceutical company who, from their diabetes drug, caused about 7,000 people across the country to get bladder cancer, and many of them died from it. We kept our cases in state court, went and took them on, and we actually drove the national settlement, and we believe, and they believe, that's what will happen here. The MDL, those cases are going to be stuck there for years. No one knows how long. Whereas we can get cases to trial relatively quickly here in Nevada, and either verdicts or settlements we achieve here will drive the whole national settlement. So we're working hand in hand with these same lawyers. Now, so to answer your question, if it does go to an MDL, then we will be continuing, first of all, be trying to remand it to state court, and I think we'd be successful in that because we do have Nevada corporations who are defendants in this case. But on the very small chance it didn't happen, we would continue to prosecute these cases in the MDL. And if they don't settle, then they would come back to the federal district courts here for trial. They don't get tried in the MDL in Cleveland. They would come back to federal district court here for trial.
And if I may expand on that, Bill Bradley, Miracle, they'd come back to the federal district court in Reno and Las Vegas. Now, we don't think they will be removed. I'm currently involved in 2 MDLs, one for knee replacements and one for the little filter that they put in people's vena cava to stop blood clots from coming up into their lungs, and the tines broke off and went into people's hearts and lungs and causing them a lot of problems. The delay that has occurred by the MDL is this. There was just the first verdict against the filter manufacturer last week, but in the knee cases, there have been 5 verdicts against those manufacturers of those implants, DePuy knee implants. But then the defendant appeals within the federal district court. And the appeal from the federal district court up to the to the Court of Appeals is a 2 to 3 to 4 year process. So all the cases of all those people that are injured are put on hold while those appeals of the federal district court cases are going on. The knee cases have been going on for 6 years, I think, and there's no end in sight. 7 years?
8, 7, or 8.
Yeah. And so the other side of that is this. In the MDLs, at least the Attorney General's cases, as Mr. Eglett said earlier, those damages will be awarded to the state. Now, I'm not talking about if this city gets moved into it, which we don't think they will, and if they do, we think we'll be successful in remand. But those damages are then, as Mr. Eglett indicated, given to the state and distributed by the legislature. And if we go back and look at the history of the tobacco litigation.
What happens at that juncture, Bill? If we're removed, we're part of the MDL, the state settles, does the contingency fee still apply to what we get out from the state?
Yes. But,
okay. Let me.
Yep, go ahead.
Okay, first of all, the cases, the state and the Attorney General has exclusive jurisdiction over 2 things. The Medicaid dollars and the statutory deceptive trade practices. That is not what our suit is about. So they're separate lawsuits. They don't have anything to do with each other. And those are separate damages from each of the counties in our state. The counties are responsible for law enforcement, jails, the first responders, social services, all of that stuff, which I talked about earlier. Those are each county, and in some cases cities have, those are damages to them. Our Attorney General is not involved in the MDL currently. They're part of an investigation. There's been no lawsuit filed by General Laxalt currently. That doesn't prevent them from bringing an action in the future, but it doesn't interfere with the actions of the counties and cities, and nor does the counties or cities interfere with their action, because these are different damages. However, if the counties sit back and say, well, we're just going to rely on the Attorney General trying to get all of the money for all of the counties or our county along with the state's money, you're putting your citizens and what they end up with in control of the state legislature, because the state legislature, the money has to go into the general fund, and then the state legislature decides how and where that money is spent, as opposed to your Board of Supervisors deciding what is best for Carson City and where this money should go. So even if there is an MDL and in our case gets removed, and I agree with Mr. Bradley, we're going to keep this out of federal court and we'll get it remanded if it does. But on the off chance for some reason that, lightning strikes in a bottle and that happens, it's still your case. So at the end of the day, if the case settles, that money comes to the county supervisors to decide what to do with and how to best spend it for your community, versus the legislature deciding how much money you should get to spend on whatever is available next. And what happened in tobacco litigation in Nevada is Nevada got roughly $1.3 billion out of the tobacco litigation. Now, the states who pursued our own cases got a lot more money, and our Attorney General decided not to hire outside counsel and do that. But what happened was the legislature, none of that money went to the counties. It paid for the Millennial Scholarship, and I'm not criticizing the Millennial Scholarship. It's a great thing, but at the time of the tobacco litigation, Nevada had the highest smoking rate in the country. And we had a lot of people who didn't have insurance who were suffering from lung cancer, and the counties, could have done something with that money to more effectuate the problem. And that's one of the things I'm so concerned.
What's the status right now of where the Attorney General is?
Attorney General is involved in an investigation. Primarily, his focus is on the Medicaid dollars. If you've seen some of the things that have been going on right now, it's really focused on the Medicaid dollars and trying to change some of the laws so they can not only go after fraud or abuse of Medicaid dollars in the healthcare facilities, but also in private places where they can sometimes give these prescriptions. There's no lawsuit has been filed. We did a presentation to the Attorney General a couple weeks after the legislature ended last year. At that time, he said, well, I'm going to go forward, continue to look at this investigation. We'll get back to you on what our decision is. So at any time, the Attorney General could file a lawsuit. Most cases, that would be, again, hiring outside counsel to pay the cost, because the state doesn't have the money to pay the cost any more than the counties do of litigation on a contingency fee basis.
Let me ask you, I got you going down there, but let me ask you just kind of a more direct question. I mean, maybe it's a political question or not, but if we go on our own, are we going to be hampering the state's ability to move?
No, none whatsoever, because, again, Mayor, the state's jurisdiction is over the Medicaid dollars and the statutory deceptive trade practices. This is a totally different lawsuit with different damages involved. It doesn't hamper the state at all.
Let me just say, Mayor Kroll, when we talk about the Deceptive Trade Practices Act, Mr. Bradley, the Deceptive Trade Practices Act is fine-based. So for each violation that a jury finds that these manufacturers and distributors violated the Deceptive Practices Act, there's a fine. And thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of violations will build that pot of money for the fines in combination with the Medicaid dollars. But those are the only two items of damage that are recoverable by the Attorney General. This county's losses on the systems that Mr. Eglett has talked about are not what we're talking about. Those aren't Medicaid dollars. We're not looking for fines. We're looking to reimburse this county and the other counties for all the expenditures that they have incurred other than Medicaid dollars.
As well, this is Robert Eglett for the record, as well as providing you damages to try to utilize to solve the problem. And that is enough money to pay for the rehab of your citizens who are addicted. And that's a lot of money.
I have one more question, then I'll get off. Lawyers, we always like to talk to each other. When one lawyer gets a chance to grill the other one, man, we go at it. What other jurisdictions are you representing now in the state?
We currently represent Clark County, North Las Vegas, and Henderson, as well as Reno. We have done presentations and are in the process of negotiating the fee agreement with Churchill, Lyon, Humboldt counties.
And getting ready to make a presentation to the Washoe County Commission.
Getting ready to make a presentation to Washoe County and Nye County, and we're in discussions with the city of Las Vegas.
Okay, I got it. Sorry, folks. Go ahead.
That's okay. Thank you for bringing this forward. I just wish it could be more broad brush. And by that I mean, I wish that it could also include the gateway products that come into our convenience stores that are just introductions into this, because that's widespread as well and of a concern. I feel that it's much needed. We're charged with the health, safety, and welfare of our community, and we've lost far too many, young and old. And the workforce, you talked about that, it has seriously hampered. I sit on Nevada Works, and I know the impact it's had on the rurals in terms of workforce. And that's devastating, and it takes people out of that workforce, if not temporarily, permanently. And it's hit home for me personally and my own family, so I get this. I just want to make sure from a staff time perspective and from a cost perspective from our city that it's not going to take away from our coffers. I see it as an opportunity to fund transitional housing with wraparound services that are hugely important for rehabbing folks in our community. Some of the rehab facilities are nothing more than country clubs, and it needs to be more of a hard knocks situation in order to get these people to be productive citizens in our community. So mine is more about the time commitment for staff and cost to the city, if any.
Thank you, Supervisor, about Robert Eglett for the record. As I explained to the mayor, the time spent on any city employees to, we have experts who are going to calculate the damages, who will get deep into the weeds. But any time spent by any county employees on assisting us are recoverable cost at the end of the case. However, we can reimburse the county for that time in real time. So it's not costing you, other than maybe a week of delay between the time you're reimbursed. And just to bring up one other issue, because you talked about the gateway, I agree with you. And if you talk to most people whose families have been affected by this opiate crisis, I'm going to give you the story, and she's allowed me to share the story with everyone. And many of you may know Marilyn Kirkpatrick, who's one of our Clark County commissioners. And this is her family's story. And I'll tell you, every time I call Marilyn, the way she answers the phone with me is 94, 70, or 102, 112, whatever the number may be. And what she's telling me is that's the number of days her daughter has been drug-free. Her daughter, and this is the typical story, her daughter had a sports injury in high school. Went and had a surgery for her sports injury, and then post-surgery she's prescribed and given 120 days worth of opiates. And she became addicted. And then they put her on it more long term. She continued to be addicted. They tried to wean her off, and finally they just stopped prescribing. So she turned to the streets and started buying the opiates on the streets. And what most of these addicts, almost all of them, discover is once they start buying these pills on the streets, is that they can get heroin for 30 to 40 times less money, and it is the exact same chemical compound as these drugs. So her daughter is a heroin addict. And this has affected every parts of our community. This isn't like back in the 70s when you heroin addicts, you think of the inner streets of New York City and Baltimore. That's not where it is anymore. It is everywhere. It is in some of our most affluent communities where sometimes entire families get addicted to heroin. And this black tar heroin that comes up from Mexico is extremely cheap. And now, of course, they're lacing it with fentanyl, so it's become much more deadly. And so these opiates, these prescription opiates, have become a gateway drug to heroin, and it is responsible for the heroin epidemic. And I can literally draw for you on a map in the United States and show you how, where the big pill mills came up, the drug dealers from Mexico with the black tar heroin followed wherever the pill mills were. They followed the opiate epidemic and created the heroin epidemic. So in our view, the heroin addiction problem is part of the damages from these prescription opiate problems.
And may I add one thing to that? Because I had a conversation with a pain manager, Bill Bradley. I had a conversation with a pain management specialist yesterday who told me, I said, what's your reaction to all of the new laws regarding opioid prescription limitation in Nevada that our legislature did the last session? And she told me that she is deathly concerned about that because that legislation has now gone so far, rightfully or wrongfully, to eliminate abuse of or overprescription of narcotics, that she believes now people have to go back to the street. And all the people who can no longer get their prescriptions because of the laws have one choice now, and that will be to go back onto the streets. So she was telling me that she anticipates a significant increase in future heroin addictions because of what we're trying to do to stop the opioid.
Go ahead. Let me just drill down one other thing while I'm thinking here, then Supervisor Barrett's got a question. On the 25% contingency fee, suppose the state hasn't filed a lawsuit yet. They're in some form of settlement, and whatever they call their settlement agreement with these guys. And as you said, Bill, they're going under deceptive trade practices. But if it all gets tossed into a pot, and the state gets a certain amount of money, and they distribute that money down to us, does the 25% apply to the state money coming down to us?
No. It is only money we recover for you directly.
And just so I know, and I appreciate getting in the weeds here, guys, if something like that does happen, we'll be able to track that to a degree. We'll be able to track that, so we'll know what the retainer agreement applies to and what it doesn't, in terms of the contingency fee amount?
The contingency fee agreement will only apply to monies we receive in settlement directly for the county, nothing passing through the state.
Okay, and so it won't.
So whatever that is.
So if the state settles, they're not going to go through you?
No.
All right, I'm sorry. Supervisor Barrett,
Thank you. I'm often interested in what lawyers say and what lawyers don't say. And I just want to see, this is a yes or no question. You mentioned that McKesson was fined $150 and that Cardinal was fined $44, I believe. I assume that was utilized to show how that's a slap on the wrist.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Secondly, who are you suing and who in Nevada, or has that been determined?
What's the name of the distributor? Watson Pharmaceutical is one of the local manufacturers, but there's a distributor too. Cardinal Health is in Nevada. who is one of the big three, is Nevada Corporation, as well as there are some pharmacies who are essentially pill mills, or have been pill mills. Some of them have been, have been required to stop that behavior, but they will be defendants as well.
Thirdly, I noticed in your presentation, which by the way was very thorough and great, that you had up there that the leading cause, it was the leading cause of death, but you said the leading cause of death and injury. Is it both, or is it?
It's both.
Okay,
yeah,
thank you.
It's not guns, which a lot of people are saying.
Yeah, you mentioned that.
It's not
right.
guns.
Right. Fourth, I'm curious because you said, we know for a fact that 35% of the criminal justice costs are attributed to opioids. That's my language, not yours, but close enough. Do you have a citation on that?
We have been, this is information, this is empirical information, anecdotal information that we've received from the district attorneys and county commissions from the counties we've talked to. And what we've been told, it is in the range, what we've been told, it appears to be between 25 and 35. And I'll confess, we haven't spoken to every single county about this issue, but the range we have gotten so far is between 25 to 35% of their entire criminal justice budget has been spent on the opiates crisis.
Yeah, I just was looking for a source. And finally, did the Attorney General ever get back to you?
Back to me when? On?
You said he was going to get back to you on what he was going to do. And
General Laxalt and I have had multiple discussions since our meeting, which I think was in June of last year. Where we came and we did, it was actually about a 2-hour presentation down at the Sawyer Building in Las Vegas. We've had multiple conversations. He has indicated to me that he is not precluding at some point maybe a state action. But at this point in time, he's involved in this negotiation, involved in a bunch of other attorney generals to see if they can resolve something. But again, those are different damages than the counties would have.
Pardon my linguistic indulgence, but they're attorneys general, as I recall.
My understanding was when I address him, it's General Laxalt. So.
It's actually.
Thank you.
Supervisor Wankowski has to leave here shortly, and I don't want you to think he's not. He's got a an engagement that he can't miss, and he'll be gone this afternoon. He's going to take some well-deserved time off, and he's leaving here. So, is that fair to say like that? Okay. What do you got, Mr. DA?
A couple. Jason Woodbury for the record. I have read a little bit recently about the federal government, Department of Justice, taking a look at this issue and possibly entertaining the idea of entering this litigation or initiating some other sort of proceeding. What are your thoughts on that?
I think Attorney General Session has indicated recently that they have told the MDL judge in northern Ohio that the federal government will not be participating in the MDL. They will not be part of it. They were interested in potentially being part of any settlement negotiations, but they do not intend to intervene or be a part of the MDL litigation, and that if they do file a lawsuit, it would be a separate action.
Would you anticipate if they did file a separate lawsuit, there would be any impact on our ability to proceed or our ability to recover?
No. Again, the federal government has certain jurisdiction over certain damages, but they don't have jurisdiction over the damages that have been suffered by the local counties and cities for the social services they provide. I mean, clearly, there has been an impact that has affected our federal government as well, but they would not have the ability to usurp the counties or cities' damages, or the states, quite frankly.
You would think one of their main goals would be the Medicare dollars. I'm sorry. Excuse me, Bill Bradley for the record. You would think that their main goal would be the Medicare dollars.
Right.
Are you aware of any other private law firm that has engaged any city or county in the state on this matter?
No, there was, sorry, Robert Eglett for the record. There was, Reno did a RFP or RFQ, and there were some out-of-state firms that applied. The thing is the out-of-state firms, their intention, and they didn't, hide, they didn't try to say otherwise. Their intention was simply to file the case in federal court and ship it off to the MDL and kind of sit back and see what happens, as opposed to taking a proactive role and trying to litigate these cases here and get them resolved. And we have an MDL in one other county, or a RFQ in one other county. Is it Nye County? Nye County, and the only Nevada firms that are on that are our firms. The other firms are out-of-state firms that basically are doing these MDLs and just trying to go around the country getting counties and cities to allow them to represent them in the MDL.
Jason Woodbury for the record. Can you expand on, I saw a reference in the presentation about injunctive relief that might be available. Can you expand on what that might look like?
Yeah, Robert Eglett for the record. One of the things.
You guys don't have to do that all the time. I mean, we do that. I mean, just.
Okay, all right, thank you. We're used to the legislature. So, one of the things that we want is in the injunctive relief is an order preventing the opiate manufacturers from continuing to engage in the marketing that they have been engaging in for more than 20 years now, making these false statements about, less than 1% of your patients will become addicted. If they are addicted, the addiction will be easily managed. As long as they have real pain, they won't get addicted. I mean, these are some of the things their detailers and their marketing material and the seminars they've been putting on. I mean, they had a multi-pronged marketing campaign. I've never seen anything so aggressive in my life on this, but to stop them from doing that. And I will tell you that I think in New York, or at least is it New York or New York City? New York State obtained this type of injunctive relief against them. So they can't market these opiates in the same way that they continue to market in Nevada, in New York.
Is anybody looking at different types of injunctive relief that would require the companies to establish treatment facilities, treatment programs, homeless facilities, things of that nature?
I don't know that you can get injunctive relief for that. The way to accomplish that is providing each of the counties the damages, the money that they need, and those are future damages that I talked about, to be able to either pay that for their citizens who are addicted into private rehab centers or develop their own rehab centers.
And just to ask a question directly, it seems to me that an attorney general, the attorney general, or a public lawyer might have a greater incentive to pursue that kind of injunctive relief on behalf of Carson City than a private firm working on a contingency would. Do you have any thoughts on that?
The injunctive relief that I talked about?
Yes, sir.
As I said from the beginning, I've been in this state my whole life, and I've personally witnessed the devastation that is caused. This case is personal to me, so I am very 100% behind getting this injunctive relief and an order saying that they cannot engage in this type of marketing, because I know, I've seen firsthand what it has done, and I love this state. I've raised 3 children here. I expect that they're going to raise their children here, and it's important to me, and I know it's important to Bill.
Mr. Woodbury, when you're talking about injunctive relief, you're talking about through the Attorney General's action or through even your office's action? What are you thinking there?
Just in general, through any action, who might have the greater incentive to get that? I mean, because, injunctive relief is not monetary. You don't take 25% of injunctive relief. So, there's some thought out there that maybe private firms won't be as motivated as a public attorney to to pursue that.
And just to further respond to that, that's one of the reasons why the Carson City District Attorney office would be co-counsel on this case, just like the Clark County District Attorney's Office is co-counsel with us in the state in Clark County. They're part of the case. Now, we're obviously taking the rowing oar and doing all the work and putting up the cost, but the district attorney's office down there is, we have periodic reports. We have people we answer to down there about this case. I suspect it would be the same way up here.
On the reimbursement of costs, I understand what you indicated, that any staff time, any copying costs, things of that nature that are incurred will be reimbursed by your firm. Is that just for requests that you make to us, or what about discovery requests when we get them from the defendant?
Well, at that point in time, we should have access to everything that's needed, and so we'd be able to provide the people to do that. But again, if those are expenses that are incurred, then we can look at those as recoverable cost. And if we don't recover them at the end of the day, then that's just cost that we don't recover, that we've fronted for the county. I mean, there's lots of cases where, we pay the cost. We don't. Most of the cases we handle, and I think Mr. Bradley will confirm this, that we pay a lot of costs that aren't awarded at the end of the case for whatever reason, or are not recoverable, and that's just part of doing business.
Thank you for the discussion on the diversity strategy that you've got. Has any other jurisdiction employed this kind of strategy in actual litigation and been successful that we could take a look at?
I don't, on this particular issue?
Yeah, on the issue of naming an in-state distributor or whatever.
That's done all the time, but are you talking about the opiates cases or any other type of cases?
In this case in particular.
Okay, so the state of Kentucky brought their own action and kept it in state court in Kentucky. And West Virginia. And New York too, didn't they? I think they did. So yes, I mean there are currently, not all of the cases, nowhere near all the cases have been filed. There's over 430 cases now that have been filed. Not all of those cases are in federal court. They have been filed in the counties where the jurisdiction lies within those states. And I know that there was one case that was removed and was remanded. What? West Virginia. So, yeah, there is, and one thing I forgot to mention, Supervisor Barrett, when you asked about the other potential defendants that would help us destroy diversity, there are also a lot of these, the detailers, which are basically the drug salesmen. They live here in Nevada, and that's another strategy we employ to destroy diversity and keep them in state courts. So they're some of them are potential defendants as well.
That's all I had, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Any other questions of the board? Anybody, member of the public, want to weigh in on this topic this morning? It's a fascinating topic. I want our district attorney, if it's me with the approval of the board, I want our district attorney to take a look at what we've had said today, and then we'll see where we go with this thing. But it was a very informative presentation. So we'll see where we go, Bob and Bill. We'll see where we end up on it, okay?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank
Bill,
you all for your time.
We appreciate the
I
opportunity.
waited years to tell you that.
I didn't hear what you said, Mr. Mayor.
I said I waited years to tell you did a great job.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Pleasure to see you all.
All right, board. I think that's it for opioid, unless we want to move forward, but I know Supervisor Bonkowski had to leave, so unless there's anything else, why don't we just stand in recess until 1:30 and we'll take up
Mr. Mayor,
2 o'clock.
just so that we have a clear record, since there's an agenda and a following agenda item, if you could state as chairman what it is that you want to
do with that item, whether it's remanded back to staff or bring it back.
Which item is that?
The following agenda.
The following agenda item, which is an action item on the.
I want that, to just refer that to you guys, and when you guys feel comfortable one way or the other, let us know. Is that all right?
Meaning the DA's office.
The DA's office.
Okay.
You folks, I shouldn't say you guys. You folks. I mean, you know, this is one of those ones where it's got policy implications and it's got, you know, political implications, and there's, you know, it's my position, my own personal thought, you know, we need to all be on the same page on this thing, you know, at least locally here. And, you know, I guess, you know, I don't want to step on anybody else's toes. I want the state to maximize the amount of money it can get, and I want the counties to maximize the amount that we get. I guess, you know, kind of where I fall down, you know, not fall down, but where I have some question, and you guys can think about this one and let me know if I'm all wet, probably am, is that there's a different theory of damages. And I don't, you know, so I don't, and, you know, if we're splitting off Medicaid damages, okay, we get that, but that doesn't pick up the rest of the damages that we're getting locally here. And so, you know, that's what I want you to think through for me. And I mean, and the other thing is, I don't want to interfere with something. You know, this is just me. I mean, I don't want to interfere with something that's going to hamper the state from proceeding down the road. But I also want to make sure that, you know, if we're going to get involved in this, that you know, the damages we see here locally are taken care of. And you know, Woody, I tend to agree with you that, you know, that sometimes a public lawyer can get better on injunctive relief. You know, I wish I could say that happens today in terms of a bunch of veteran drug addicts that are living in our shamble hotels.
Right.
And it's not. I'll leave it at that. All right, got enough to go down the road?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. We'll review that and bring it back for a
Okay.
vote.
All right. Unless there's an objection, we'll stand in recess until 2 o'clock.